Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode 82. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us for this Wednesday show, Dave. Good to be back with you. We have a really special show today. Hopefully one we'll be having throughout the year, a Depot Draft Roundtable discussion with guests a little bit later in the show. Those are going to be Jonathan Heitrader, Tyler Wise, and Devin Jackson, already hard at work producing great draft content for us on the site. Also, Jonathan, Tyler, myself will be down in Mobile, Alabama this time next week for the 2022 Senior Bowl. So that is kind of the topic of discussion today, a Senior Bowl preview with a heavy focus on the quarterback position, because it's basically a who's who of quarterbacks that'll be down in Mobile in a very competitive, kind of tightly contested quarterback class.
Absolutely. Boy, can't wait to bring what a discussion we had with those guys, and can't wait to pass along for the listeners to hear today. If you're into draft stuff, and if you're into obviously learning more about specifically the quarterbacks, we spent a lot of time going through the quarterbacks, and also towards the end of the show talking about some other guys that these guys will be looking forward to seeing down in Mobile. I learned a lot, and I was on the edge of my seat throughout the thing. Great content.
Yeah, and I do want to give the Twitter handles off the top for those guys to follow, because you should be following those guys. They've worked so hard and they deserve your time for sure. So be sure to follow Jonathan on Twitter at J_Heights, HEITS. Be sure to follow Tyler on Twitter at TriggeredWise, and follow Devin on Twitter at RealD_Jackson. And so we'll talk with those guys in a little bit. But for now, you guys are stuck with us for the next half hour. Dave and I, as we discuss some of the non-draft news happening in Pittsburgh. And according to a report from the Post-Gazette's Jerry Dulac this morning, we had mentioned on Monday's show about the team's requested interview with Giants DC Patrick Graham for the same position in Pittsburgh. Following Keith Butler's retirement, we can now add two other names that have been either interviewed or plan to be interviewed. Those two are Saints secondary coach Chris Richard and Cowboys secondary coach Joe Witt Jr. And so Richard was known the other day. Witt Jr. just came across on Wednesday. And so we still believe Terrell Austin is the favorite at this point, but you can't rule out these other guys, obviously. And so it's Graham, Richard, and Witt, and Austin seem to be the four as of now to be the Steelers' next DC.
Yeah, we'll have to see if any gets any names get added to that list, obviously in the coming days. But it would feel like they've satisfied. I think the Rooney Rule probably requirements, if indeed these the ones that are being reported do go through those interviews there, and if they do, then you would think they'd be coming to a decision here pretty soon.
Yeah, you would think so within the next, several days, as we talked about it. If they're going to hire one of these external guys, it would be, ideally before the Senior Bowl, so they're there, with the team when they go down to Mobile. But if it's Austin's, again, there's probably less urgency there. I know Richard was talked up quite a bit when he was with Dallas, and then things kind of didn't go too well last year, and so his name was cooled off a bit. He was with Seattle, where they kind of run some of the cover 3 type stuff. So we'll have to learn more about their backgrounds if any of these guys get hired. But that open DC spot's the one to watch. And of course, what's going to happen with the head offensive line coach as well. We know that Chris Morgan's the interim coach and probably the front runner to maintain that job, but that's still an open spot on the coaching staff right now. So we'll have to keep an eye on that as well.
Absolutely.
All right, Dave. Chase Claypool on Twitter last night literally had a photo montage of his second year, and 3 of the photos were just kind of standard, football action photos, but one showed him in a hospital bed with the seeming to have surgery on right hand or wrist. Didn't really have a great feel for what it might have been. So he didn't outright acknowledge the surgery, just was part of the collage and kind of said, here's to year 2 in the books and one of those end of year posts. But it does seem like he had surgery of some type on his right hand or right arm or something along those lines. So that's, something that we didn't know about until Claypool tweeted it out.
Yeah, and I think Mike Tomlin said that nothing serious, happening surgery-wise. Didn't rule out bumps and bruises associated with play. That very well could be this. What was Dr. Mel's kind of speculation on this?
I saw just one tweet from her that I included in the post. Let me go ahead and pull up what she had said, and she would be able to analyze this much better than I could. She just said, maybe some sort of soft tissue repair, not ligament or tendon. Says, yeah, I'm trying to parse the medical language here, which I'm not very good at.
Me either.
But some surgery.
It doesn't sound serious overall, and I think she kind of deducted of because there was the Instagram post a couple of days ago about him going down to Houston. I think she put 2 and 2 together about kind of what was it, like a wrist or hand specialist?
Yeah, it looks like there's this Dr. Thomas Hunt, who's a hand specialist in terms of these surgeries.
All right, so probably something to do along those lines. I know he did have that kind of that messed up I think ring finger on that right hand, but according to the pictures, I don't think it didn't look like that was bandaged up at all there. So who knows? Maybe hand, wrist, something along those lines. But it doesn't seem to be overly serious. I don't think anything is going to keep him sidelined too terribly long. At least just looking at one picture.
Yeah, we'll see what his spring status is for OTAs and things like that. He could be back again. We don't have details on what the injury is and the surgery was, but he'll be back for training camp. But that's probably the most important thing to note. Yeah, he didn't show up on the injury report all year with anything that was, hand, arm, had a turf toe, which kept him out of a game or two this year. So that was the injury that we knew. But there are always small things and things that don't seem obvious that players get worked on and cleaned up in the offseason.
It wasn't his first down pointing arm, so everybody relax.
Maybe it was when he was trying to turn on music at practice or something.
There you go.
His hand. No, I give him credit. I think he did mature at the end of the year. I pointed out, showed a clip of that. I think after the game against Baltimore, it was in Week 18. So I think this guy has grown up some. At least I hope that he did. Obviously, we'll have to see that and see what his further actions are in the future. But I'm just kind of messing with him a little bit.
Yeah.
Speaking of receivers, report came out from Pro Football Network's Aaron Wilson yesterday that indicated that JuJu Smith-Schuster, who nearly went to the Chiefs last year, Andy Reid recruited him pretty hard, and it was one basically came down to KC or Pittsburgh for JuJu, could go to KC this offseason. The report is that multiple league sources or players or people in NFL circles seem to believe that JuJu has expressed a desire to play with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid in 2022. So it is just one report. We'll see what happens. Publicly, JuJu has expressed an interest to stay in Pittsburgh long term. So we'll just have to wait and see. But that report is notable, especially once free agency kicks up here in less than 2 months.
Yeah, look, I mean, I bet there's a couple teams he'd probably be willing to play for, especially if the guaranteed money and the average yearly value is up there. I know he has talked just not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, about look, he's going to continue to say all the right things, right? He wants to return to Pittsburgh, 4-year deal. I bet he is a little bit, that experience last year and only getting that one-year deal for what was it, $8 million in total, which was essentially a 1-year deal. I mean, obviously it had the void years attached to it there. I don't know, I don't know what's going to be out there for him. It's very unfortunate his season went the way that it did, because you would have a more definitive ability to say, look, he increased his market value, but with him missing all those games and not being able to showcase probably some of the things, because remember there was all talk about he wanted to play outside more, wanted to be potentially stretch the football down the field more. Never got the opportunity to show any of that. I'm not so sure that, I mean, look, there will probably be teams probably have some multi-year deals out there for him, but I don't see how any team right now could throw, 12, 13, 14, 15 million, at him per season on a multi-year deal. So I almost wonder if his best course of action once again might be a 1-year, $8 to $10 million, maybe with, because weren't a couple of those teams like the Chiefs or the Ravens kind of incentives in there as well too. I'm not so sure that might not be the route he goes. And the Steelers are not a team that likes to have those likely to be earned or those not likely to be earned incentives in contracts. They're pretty much, and I'm willing to bet this time around too, they're probably thinking, boy, we sure would like to at least get you to a 2-year deal. I'm not convinced that they would throw a 4-year deal at him from where I sit right now. So it really is going to be. There were a lot of questions with him last year during the offseason. I really thought that he had positioned himself maybe in a market where maybe he could get some of that. Who's the Rams wide receiver? Not Woods.
Kupp.
Yeah, Kupp. So some of that kind of similar type money in there. And then obviously with the whole COVID thing probably hurt that wide receiver market overall, or really in general, free agent market there. So he ended up getting, half of what I maybe thought potentially he could get on the free agent market there. I don't know what way it's going to turn out with him. I was on the radio yesterday there with Dave Weekley in Virginia. I view it as a 50-50 shot for him to return, Alex, and I don't have a good feeling either way how it's going to turn out with him.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, JuJu said he came back because it was less about the money because he took literally less money to return to Pittsburgh. It's always a factor. You're not going to pretend like it's not, including this year, this upcoming free agency. But he came back because he wanted to play with Ben. And now obviously Ben's out of the picture and Pittsburgh's quarterback situation is up in the air. So if it's going to be Patrick Mahomes and the potential Super Bowl winning Chiefs versus Rudolph, Haskins, and the great unknown, that may sway JuJu to go somewhere else. So we'll see. He could return. I think it's all on the table right now. But the main reason, according to JuJu, about why he came back last year is no longer a potential reason for him to return in 2022.
Right, exactly. And I think quarterback, well, here's the thing, they're going to have to make, at least where, if his contract does indeed void, I think the latest we have on that is supposed to void, when Roethlisberger's does 5 days after the Super Bowl there. So then you have that, it would make sense if you kind of wanted him back and could come to some sort of terms right now, would be have the ability to go in there and save yourself a little bit of cap space along the way here too, by getting him to change the language on that void, and so you still have those existing years to work with, and then use those extra void years as proration years on top of it there. So I'm not convinced that's the way it's going to go. But if you knew right now, if you're the Steelers front office, that we want JuJu back, this is his market right now. Could you get him to agree to something right now? I think you try, and it'd be very unorthodox for the Steelers to do something like that this early in the offseason, but there is the time parameter, obviously right now with that voidable stuff. So obviously the Super Bowl is just a couple of weeks away right now. So I think we'll have our answer to that, and a couple more answers here real quick on some stuff. But if you want him and you can come to terms with him, I don't see why you wouldn't try to do a deal right now. But will they? Probably not.
Yeah, he's probably a guy that wants to get a feel for his market. So it'd be hard to see him doing an extension with Pittsburgh unless they're offering a really good deal, right before the Super Bowl or somewhere around there. So we'll see. We'll keep you posted on that. Two more things, Dave, I want to get to before we start the draft portion with the guys. The Bears have hired their GM. It's Ryan Poles. Omar Khan was reportedly in the running for that job. So obviously he did not get it. And so he's likely to remain with Pittsburgh. Obviously, we'll see what happens with the successor to Kevin Colbert and those types of things. But Khan, certainly not going to be the next GM of the Bears, although I have heard, and I'm still trying to figure out sources and, how much you can trust some of this stuff. But there are some rumors, for whatever it's worth, that Khan wasn't really interviewing to be the GM, but maybe the next team president of the Bears. Apparently, he's got some really good relationships in that organization with, I think, the current team president and one of their scouting directors who Khan helped give one of his first jobs way back when. And so there are some rumors that maybe at some point, not immediately, but in the future, Khan could take on a different kind of executive, again, potential team president role with a team, with Chicago.
Yeah, look, I mean, definitely something to be on the lookout for here, and see how this transpires. Obviously, after the post Colbert era, whenever that happens here at some point this offseason, is one of the two internal candidates going to say, look, I obviously have no future here at this point, going to maybe try to take their ball elsewhere,
Yeah, but where do they go, I guess is the question. I'm sure they can get a job, but is it the same job, different organization, less stability, more unknown? I mean, there's always questions there. But yeah, Omar Khan, not the GM of the Bears. Byron Leftwich, by the way, I don't think it's official yet, but reportedly going to be the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So kudos to Byron Leftwich. It's kind of crazy. The guys that we watch playing are now head coaches.
Yeah, and look, Adam Schefter did add to that this morning, though. He says the Jaguars continue talking with Bucks OC, Byron Leftwich, and Colts DC Matt Eberflus, who, by the way, is really an up-and-coming guy. Not a lot of people talk about that. I think to hear that guy do some of the I've listened to a couple of his interviews on the Colts website. I think he really, really does a good job, probably underrated. But Schefter says Byron Leftwich and Colts DC, Matt Eberflus, amongst others, but are not close to a deal with anyone at this time. Per sources, Jags haven't decided which way they'll go. Organization's still going through the process and figuring it out. So I know there were some reports from some Jaguar sites almost guaranteeing that Leftwich is going to be the guy. And I said well over a month ago, and this was before they had fired Urban Meyer. I thought that would be a perfect fit for the Jaguars there, but it doesn't sound like it's as done up deal as maybe some of these next level reporters, if you will, kind of insinuated on Twitter yesterday.
Okay, yeah, I'm reading a tweet right now from Mark Maskey who says the Jaguars and Leftwich are discussing contractual issues. This was trending last night toward Leftwich getting the job, and that remains the case, but nothing finalized yet. That was an hour ago. Around 11 a.m. So looks like he's still the favorite, but yeah, nothing's done till it's done, I suppose.
But that's the way I would go, would be with Leftwich for sure. Young quarterback there. I think, obviously Leftwich got his, start with the Jaguars, understands the culture there, and that would put butts in the seats, and I think it would be a good fit, young up and coming guy like him in that organization. We'll see if Shad Khan makes the right decision there.
Jacksonville certainly needs butts and seats. That is not their strength right now. Last thing I want to get to, Dave, and it is maybe the most notable news of the last couple of days. Keith Butler and kind of his retirement tour is spilling all the dadgum tea, Dave, about his time with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Joined 93.7 The Fan with a really good interview, about 22 minutes, just talking about his time there, and was very open and honest, as Butler usually was, and even more so now that he's officially in retirement. So he said two things. One was less of a surprise, more of confirmation. Another was a bit of a surprise to me. He talked about, and he said this, I think, even before the interview with The Fan, but that, during his tenure as DC, Mike Tomlin was the play caller there. That's more confirmation, less of a surprise overall. But he even said on the Fan interview that during Dick LeBeau's last couple of years, he didn't cite exactly how many years, but said the last couple of years that even then, that's when Tomlin began taking away some of that play calling duty, and he himself began calling plays. So that is new information that I don't think anyone had even speculated about until Butler said that the other day.
Look, I think we knew more along the lines of, and probably maybe not to the degree of what kind of Butler insinuated there, as far as how much and how little maybe he actually is calling plays, and how much Mike Tomlin is. I don't think there's ever been much of a question about that, right? I mean, we over the years, we've kind of grown to have an understanding that Mike Tomlin is heavy-handed in this thing, correct? And it was just probably to what degree. Now, the whole thing dating back to LeBeau, yeah, that is a little bit surprising there, right? But I mean, once again, they should have done a better job drilling down into what Butler said. What could Butler call? He obviously had that little tiny index card play call sheet that he had. And I think that has shrunk over the years, has it not? Didn't it used to be and maybe that's just the ability to do that on a printer and all like that. But and you don't really see Mike Tomlin flashing that card all that much. Now, Mike Tomlin by now could probably just have these calls in his head, and maybe calls them more by gut anyway when it comes to that. But not that it matters at this point, but I guess where is the balance there of how much Mike Tomlin calls versus or has called as to how much Keith Butler. I mean, Butler really. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what there was really to gain by Butler from Butler saying all that he did. You know,
I don't think he was trying to gain anything. I think he was just being honest about his experience with the team.
And Lord knows he's brutally honest and to a fault sometime. But I mean, my takeaway was not overly happy with kind of not being able to have more of a role in the defense. You know, more than anything, he was a position coach with a title. You know. And you know, that's sort of, I guess, to some level been understood for a little while, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, obviously any coordinator would like to call plays and have more control than less control, but you could certainly feel the Butler, and, you know, he had said that he expressed that to Tomlin, and Tomlin knew where he stood, but that's just how it was. And, you know, he was, I don't think it was the sharpest criticism of Tomlin. You know, he said that, you know, Tomlin's head coach, he can do what he wants. And listen, a lot of head coaches do call plays. It's mostly offensive guys calling their plays. It was kind of de facto OCs and things like that. So it's not some sort of brand new dynamic. You just don't hear about someone calling defensive plays too much because there aren't too many defensive-minded head coaches in the NFL. So I don't think this is necessarily a big positive or negative thing to discuss in those terms. It's just a information gathering and fact-finding kind of thing about how exactly it worked. And like you said, we still don't know exactly how the dynamic worked. I wish there would have been some more questions about that in terms of, because there's been some reports that Tomlin would jump in sometimes and Butler would occasionally call plays. Was it more of Tomlin creating the structure about these are the, you know, we don't have all the answers there still, I don't think. But obviously Tomlin is controlling and running the show. That's the overall point. And that means
but we do that, right?
Yeah, that part's not new. I'm saying about the actual dynamic about how they went about it exactly. I don't have all the answers to that. I don't think anyone still quite does, but it does recognize that when Tomlin's running the show, and that will continue, you're not going to bring in the top level DC, the Fangio, the Martindales, or any other super hot name, because they're not going to come in to be, you know, the game plan guy that's not running the show on Sundays.
Doesn't matter.
I think I don't know if it probably less than what people are saying or thinking. And I think
you gave that a little pause though.
Well, I'm just trying to think how to process what matters and like how to interpret that question. I would say overall, people need to recognize how good this defense was in 2019 and 2020. Like, I know it wasn't very good in 2021, or at least took big steps backward, but I think injuries had a huge factor into that. So I think people say, oh, Tomlin should give up the job. He's not doing a good job with it. There was really talented elite defenses in 19 and 20. So again, this is just kind of for Butler, at least confirming what we already suspected, or at least have suspected for a couple of years now.
Look, you know, I think a lot of people quickly forget that, you know, we even both thought that 2020 was, if there was going to be a shot for this team to win a Super Bowl in the next, whatever, 3 or 4 years, that was it. And it's because of the, you know, a lot to do with the defense on top of it there. And was the defense maybe as good? I mean, it was damn good. It was good enough in 2020 to win a championship, right? And we have seen in recent years prior to that, this team have some pretty good defenses. Now, you go back to a couple years ago when they obviously lost Shazier in the middle of the season. Boy, thing that really changed the dynamics of that defense, and then why they went about the method that they went of Sean, you know, trying to shoehorn Sean Spence back into that thing, and Arthur Moats inside instead of just playing, you know, maybe a guy like L.J. Fort in there. There were a lot of curious decisions in there, but and look, I mean, teams have to overcome injuries. That's just something that you better have the depth to do. But when you had what you had happen to this defensive line, this past year specifically, and then you throw on top of it, you have a guy like Devin Bush that, for lack of a better, he regressed, man. And was that because of not having a better offense? A better defensive line in front of him? That's the way Keith Butler kind of framed it the other day. But look, you draft these guys to be playmakers regardless, is my view on that. I don't want the excuses of this isn't the old Steelers 3-4 where you have those guys two-gapping to let those guys run and chase. That's not the way it works anymore. If you're going to play off the ball inside linebacker in a 3-3-4 defense, hybrid defense this year, you better be able to go make some plays on your own without somebody taking up blockers for you. So that's a whole nother discussion anyway. But this defense was really, really hampered against the run. And I think a lot of that had to do with losing guys like Tyson Alualu and not having a guy like Stephon Tuitt. This defense would have been monumentally better, I think, than it was had they had those two guys back in this unit.
Yeah, I want to talk about Tuitt in a second. Just to go back to your question of does it matter? I think it matters in two ways. A, it's always good for us on the outside to have a better understanding about how the Steelers defense works and how the coaching staff dynamic functions. And again, the Butler news about him not having really a lot of play calling control is not surprising, but it is good to finally have confirmation of that because we never really had that before. So it's just good to know that for our own knowledge about how things function. And then B, as I mentioned earlier, it matters in the sense of, you're not going to probably get a flashy name as DC because, he's not going to come in. Fangio, for example, is not going to come to Pittsburgh to have Tomlin call all the plays. I mean, Fangio can go anywhere he wants and be the guy and have control and autonomy on game day. So that's where I think it matters.
Okay.
Like I said, Stephon Tuitt, Keith Butler asked about Tuitt's future in Pittsburgh. We just asked, do you think Tuitt's going to return in 2022? And let me go ahead and pull up the quote here from Butler. But basically, Butler said, "I do not know if Stephon Tuitt will come back." That was the gist of his answer. He said, quote, "I don't know where he's sitting mentally. That's something that's very private and we didn't know a whole lot about. We just took it for granted that the thing that happened to him and his family was very, very hard on him and he really struggled with it." End quote, of course, referring to the incident last June where his brother was tragically killed in a hit-and-run accident. And so we know Tuitt also had knee surgery. We don't know exactly what it was in the timetable, if there were setbacks and things like that. But obviously, and understandably so, Tuitt's still struggling with the grief of the loss of his brother. And that may have played a role for why he didn't play the entire year.
Yeah, I think, and it was always been in a lot back of a lot of people's heads, but it was one of those things that we just didn't, because there was a supposed knee injury in there as well too that he had. It's always was in the back of our head that the reason he never came back in the second half of the season was more what he was struggling with off the field with what tragically happened to his family. And even though we still don't have 100% out of his mouth confirmation that, look, I just question, I question life in general and the direction I want to go in and it's okay to do that. What did Presley Harvey? It's okay to not be okay.
Right.
In that aspect there. But I think more than anything, a takeaway from what Keith Butler said sort of kind of brings more confirmation into the fact that he didn't play because his mind wasn't right. And maybe he questions what he wants to do with his life right now. Maybe football's not a big part of that. And if that's indeed what happened, well, that's what happened. Different people handle things different ways, tragedies and life circumstances in life. Now, a lot of people, I've seen a lot of nasty stuff on this, Alex.
Yeah, I saw that one you had the other day. It was
in a comment
offensive
section on our own site too. So,
yeah.
Look, we're fans of this team. We want this team to do well and all like that. But these are human beings, people. Man, this is not just pieces of meat that you just you kick off to the side. And, a lot of people say, well, he just quit on the team. It just vile stuff. And I understand people wanting what's best for the team, but My God, let's have some compassion here. How one person might handle a situation like what that family went through would obviously be handled 10 different ways by maybe 10 other different people here. It is sad that he did not play. The Steelers did indeed miss him. Yes, they spent money that they got zero return on from him. And look, and my terrible take about this yesterday was on Tuitt. If Tuitt and they're going to have to make a decision, they're going to have to make a decision on this pretty quick out of the shoot this offseason too. And if Tuitt comes to me and he tells me, all right, I've been to, I've spent a year trying to deal with this. I've got a grasp on this now. I'm ready to come back and play football again. Then I let him come back and do that because you don't save a whole heck of a lot in a pre-June 1st cut designation after roster displacement takes place and all like that. I mean, it's under $4 million. I'd much rather have the player, and especially if I thought he could be somewhere close to that 2020 player there. So I'm not at this point. I'm not just cutting him just to cut him at this point. If that guy comes to me and says, "Look, I'm ready to play," I'd bring him back. However, and it very well might be the case, he might come to me this offseason and say, "Look, I don't want to play football anymore." Mm-hmm. Who was the outside linebacker a couple years ago?
Jason Worlds.
Just look. That happens to people, man, and you got to be okay with it. You don't have to like it, but I think you got to be okay with it. And if Tuitt comes to the front office and says, "Look, I'm done with football," then okay, he's done. Then you cut him. Make him however what way you want to eat that dead money and all like that. And obviously, decisions can be made if you want to go after portion of the percentage of the signing bonus and all like that. I doubt the Steelers would do that. To be quite honest with you, they could, but I think that's where they're at with this thing. Between now and the next look, we are exactly 7 weeks away from the start of the new league year now. So I do think you have to get a decision on him within the next 7 weeks, and I think they will. And if Tuitt comes to me and says, "I'm ready to resume my playing career," I let him. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's where I am on that. But if he's done with football, then you use the mechanisms that you have to go about terminating the contract from there.
Sure. I tweeted this out, 2-3 weeks ago, that it's a very simple equation. If he wants to come back, you welcome him back with open arms. He's a great player and a great asset to the team. If he wants to retire and walk away, you thank him and you help him out however you can, and that's perfectly fine and reasonable. And so I think that's the only way to go about it. There's really, to me, no debate or argument over it. The only question would be, what if he's not sure and says I need more time to figure that out, through the spring and through the summer. I don't think you cut him. I think you hold on to him, but it does put that gray area about his future. If he's not sure about what his future plans are and he needs more time, that would be the only thing where you don't really know what direction and approach to take.
Yeah, and then several people listen to this old school. We'll throw out the Chuck Noll quote, something about it. If you think about retirement, you already have blah blah blah. Those kind of things. Look, everybody's situation's different here. If he came to me and told me that, can you give me 8 more weeks or whatnot? I'm not putting him out on the football field. I'm not putting him in a weight room or anything. At that, I don't know if I have him, sign off on something, because the last thing that you want to do is have a guy like this that's kind of unsure, hurt himself, and he lands on your IR at a $9 million base salary, right? Mm-hmm. With no split salary there. So I think it becomes tougher to allow that to happen. But then again, if your plan was, look, we were already going to designate him. Maybe your thought was, if Tuitt came to us and told us he was done, well, we were already going to designate him as a post-June 1st cut anyway, which could ultimately happen. then maybe you allow him that extra time to work through that with the idea that, look, before we get to training camp. Well, here's the thing, though. His decision can really highly impact what you do during free agency and the draft.
Yeah, that's my point. Yeah, from that standpoint of how if you need to replace him, if you're not sure if you're going to have him or not, that's the tricky part. If you don't have a decision by 7 weeks from now,
yeah, that makes it incredibly tough at that point, because you don't get to go back in time and look. I mean, they already had that spring on them supposedly, I guess, last year with the whole David DeCastro thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, to be fair, Wormley played well, and a lot of them will going to develop. So you have some internal options. You're not, it's not vacant. There's no giant vacancy if he's not there, but you do want to know that for potential draft picks and free agency capital.
Sure. It would make it, if he can't give you an answer by, the start over the next 7 weeks, it does make it very, very tough at that point, I think. Then I think you have to make a decision organizationally at that point. I think one will either, whether he makes one or they make one for him at that point. Right. I think within the next 7 weeks. But look, it's just incredibly sad all the way around.
Sure.
All aspects of this, and I just don't. I don't understand the vileness of all this and all like that. Look, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But man, the guy's just not a piece of meat here.
Yeah, that's well said, and I think really important perspective. So, we'll let Tuitt take his time and respect whatever decision he makes. So I think that's probably a good. Anything else from Keith Butler? Actually, real quick, Dave, I think that was the bulk of the comments about the Butler interview.
What do you think about his comments about kind of, and he really didn't go deep into them other than to say, Bush knows he's got to play better. And, he kind of, made comments about the knee and all like that. But, I mean, to me, the tape don't lie there. There was a regression there that the regression was enough that I'm not giving that dude I'm not picking up his 5th-year option this year.
Yeah, not think anyone's trying to debate that anymore. Butler said the D-line didn't play well, and that makes life tougher on the linebackers, and Bush didn't play well coming off the injury. And newsflash, both can be true. It's not one or the other. It's both, and when you're 32nd, ranked run defense, historically bad unit, it usually is both. Your D-line didn't play well enough, your inside backers didn't play enough, and Bush has to play better in 2022. So I think it was a very correct assessment, but a pretty obvious assessment that I think we're all aware of.
What do you think about his comments on Dwayne Haskins?
Yeah, he's got a little Haskins fever. Said the arm strength and mobility look good, and so we'll see. He'll be in the mix.
Someone tweeted at Twitter, probably saying Haskins probably looked like Michael Vick compared to
Ben every day.
to Ben every day. I kind of wonder what. I mean, we can both agree that Haskins is not the most mobile quarterback in the world, right?
Right, but he did show a little more mobility than I thought he would in camp. I did note that going back to my camp recap. But yeah, obviously he's not that fleet of foot.
Who's more mobile?
Haskins or Ben or Rudolph or what?
We got some breaking news here. The Raiders interviewed Steelers pro scouting coordinator Brandon Hunt for their GM job Tuesday, per source, per Tom Pelissero. Hunt is expected to be one of the internal candidates to succeed Kevin Colbert in Pittsburgh.
Okay, yeah, that you'd wondered if Hunt was going to get those looks, considering how highly, obviously, the Steelers thought of him. I mean, he really hadn't gotten those looks in previous years. Had a look from the Eagles for not a GM job, but some higher level role, and that never came to fruition, I think, 3-4 years ago. So, yeah, that's going to be one to watch for sure to replace Mike Mayock. Yeah, Dave, that is really interesting news there. And I just kind of had this thought as I was writing up the story. Assuming the reports are true that Kevin Colbert is going to retire after the draft and they'll find his, promote his successor, then this is the risk you take when you go through another GM cycle of, Khan gets an interview and didn't get the job in Chicago, but there's a risk there, and Hunt now getting the job or the interview with the Raiders. And so those are just the risks you take, and why I'm surprised and frankly against the idea of Colbert going through the offseason cycle of free agency and the draft with a new guy replacing him come, let's say, May.
Yeah, look, I've thought the same thing, and someone too. Go back to the whole grocery thing analogy that I've laid out several times before. You coming in after a guy's made a lot of the decisions that go along with your job, and you're going to be on the hook for after the fact, right? I've
Right.
I've never understood the whole contract through the draft type thing anyway. I guess because you want the whole scouting, you want everybody on the same page throughout that time period.
Yeah, but if you're promoting internally,
process,
everyone's already on the same page. It's not a new external guy that's coming in and trying to feel these things out.
I guess what they worry about, and I'm guessing here, is maybe maybe a couple scouts not liking the new guy and quitting, or maybe the other way around. Maybe
they know these guys. They work with these guys. The scouting staff
I'm just throwing out potential.
Yeah,
I mean, they're not all kumbaya. I'm sure.
I'm sure, but
that's just another element to it. I mean, crap. Look what the Raiders have done in the past. You hear these horror stories with some of these scouts and all in the past, right? New regime coming in, and anyway, I just wonder if that aspect of I'll leave it this way. I never have understood the whole, through the draft type cycle there.
Yeah, I don't either. And we can talk about that more at a different time.
That's a whole new year then, I mean, once you're out of the playoffs, man, new season's underway, so I know I will say this. If I was a guy like Brandon Hunt or Omar Khan, and I thought that I was going to be the next guy, I would want a whole heck of a lot of say. And maybe they do have a lot of say. I don't know, but why would they go out there and be doing these interviews if they thought maybe they were going to be the next guy on top of it there? So who knows? Maybe I don't know. It has never added up to me, this aspect of it. And here we thought, Brandon Hunt was maybe a shoe-in. Maybe he's not. I don't know.
Yeah, even if they think they're the guy, they don't know that they're the guy. And if there's a chance to go somewhere else and be the guy, if you get offered a job, it's tempting. Now, you could, devil's advocate, say that this is just that Hunt's going to interview because, A, it's an opportunity. It's, good networking, and it's just good to have that interview experience before you go to Pittsburgh and have your official GM job interview to see what that is like. And so it's hard to turn those things down. So is Hunt the favorite? I doubt it. I don't know who's all in the running for them right now. They've had a lot of other interviews so far, so we'll see. But, Hunt's a really bright guy. I'm sure he had a strong interview. And so you don't want to say no, that there's no chance he could get this job, because obviously he could. Right.
And, I mean, look, and there's obviously the option, too, of Kevin Colbert maybe changing his mind. He
may have to at this point if they're all gone. Yeah. So we'll see. And so we'll keep you updated on that, and hopefully have some more information by Friday. So, Dave, I think we'll take a break here and come back with the main reason for today's podcast, the better half of Steelers Depot. That's Jonathan Heitritter, Tyler Wise, and Devin Jackson, talking Senior Bowl, talking quarterbacks, talking what to watch down in Mobile. So we'll take a break and come back with those guys. And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. And as we mentioned at the top of the show, and have teased all week, a very special edition of the Terrible Podcast today. Our first of what should be several Depot draft roundtable discussions. This one focusing on the Senior Bowl. So we have a great group of guys here, several of which will be covering the Senior Bowl. We have Jonathan Heitritter, Tyler Wise, and Devin Jackson. Jonathan, Tyler, myself, also Jacob Harrison will be covering the Senior Bowl this time next week. So really excited to talk to these guys, get their insights. I know that mostly, Jonathan, Tyler, Devin are probably, frankly, ahead of Dave and myself in terms of draft knowledge and draft preparation, just because they've been focusing on that, so much over the last couple of weeks. So let me first start by introing everybody, so people kind of get familiar with voices and who these guys are, because maybe you don't hear from these guys as often as Dave and I. So I'll start with Jonathan, who hit the ground running as soon as I basically gave the green light to start draft profiles. Jonathan was crashing through the doors, but we appreciate the enthusiasm for sure. So Jonathan, thanks for being on. How you doing?
Sorry about that. So
that's okay.
Yeah, no, I'm doing good, guys. I'm doing good. Just Really excited, honestly, just been chomping at the bit, obviously doing a little bit of in-season work with Steelers Depot, kind of previewing each college game and a couple of games to watch, as well as some key prospects to watch out for, as well as kind of doing that series during bowl season, kind of going through the key guys to watch and, people that the Pittsburgh Steelers might have interest in, and, just kind of finally be here in the off season. While we'd like the Steelers to still be playing, it's just nice to be able to, start the draft, free agency, all that prep, just to be able to see where the Pittsburgh Steelers take this going into next season in terms of building out this roster.
Yeah, going to be a really interesting offseason for sure. Also have Devin Jackson, who we're very happy to have back for this draft season, does tremendous work. And Devin, I know you've been covering the draft and focusing on maybe some of the more unknown, underrated guys, which is kind of one of my favorite things to read about and look at, because we all know the top prospects. It's good to hear about some of the lesser known names. So Devin, thanks for being on the show as well.
Yeah, super excited to talk NFL draft. It's been really since about May or June, taking a look ahead to these 2022 prospects. And this class, especially on the defensive side of the ball, it's going to be really deep. And I'm very excited to see who's all going to be down at the Senior Bowl. I think we're going to have, you look at position by position, probably the most talented and most diverse group of players we've seen in this game. So I'm definitely excited to talk about some of these guys today and talk about some of the underrated names that people may not know yet, but will know by April or May.
Yeah, and the Senior Bowl will do a great job highlighting some of those names. I remember, for example, Deebo Samuel was a known name, but not, a hugely known name. He goes on to the Senior Bowl, crushes it, has one of the best Senior Bowl weeks of anyone that I've seen in the years that I've gone. And, the rest is kind of history there. And then also Tyler Wise is here. He'll be his first Senior Bowl appearance. So really excited for him to get down there and see the environment of Mobile, Alabama. So Tyler, how you doing?
Doing great, Alex. And, just as I was saying before we jumped on here, I'm just really excited to see, the crop of, quarterbacks we do have down there in Mobile this year. Probably one of the best, if not the best, class that I've seen come through Mobile, really since I've started following the draft. So I'm really excited to get down there and see them firsthand and, make decisions from there. I think, somebody's going to rise to the cream of the crop probably during that week. And it's exciting to see who it is.
Yeah, when you talk about that, which player's going to rise and kind of separate themselves, that's going to be true of any position. But I think even more so, it's going to be true of the quarterback position because it is so tightly bunched. There is no clear front runner. And also, we're lucky and fortunate enough that basically every top quarterback is down in Mobile this year. So that'll kind of be the central focus of our conversation today. Not that it's going to be the entire conversation. I do want to talk about some other non-quarterbacks that are going to be attending the Senior Bowl, but I want to start with the quarterback position and begin with the national team, which will be coached by the New York Jets. And so the three quarterbacks on the roster there are Desmond Ridder, Kenny Pickett, and Carson Strong. And so, Tyler, I'll start with you, just kind of an overall assessment and feel on that group, on Ridder, Pickett, and Strong. Again, three guys that are kind of tightly bunched in terms of where they may go. Probably Ridder, Pickett a bit above Strong right now, but I don't know if all those projections matter a whole lot right now, because I truly think the Senior Bowl is going to be good for separating the pack when those guys are all down there competing with and against each other.
Yeah, so it's actually interesting. I have, my notepad in front of me here with all six of the names that will be down, or seven, I guess, of the names that will be down there. And, Pickett, Strong, and Ridder, I kind of have in their own kind of realm, because I just kind of viewed them and what their offenses they were running as true. I think the offenses will translate easier to the NFL with just what they were running. And, a lot of those guys that I kind of saw, the biggest difference between them and, Howell, Willis, Corral really were their pre-snap reads and, post-snap evaluations of the defenses. I saw a lot of, protection changes, audibles at the line of scrimmage from those guys. And that really kind of impressed me, and I thought it kind of separated them a little bit compared to the other guys when projecting them. I think they kind of, Pickett obviously I think is, the safest in the draft, if you want to go that way. I thought he did a great job of, he does a great job at at extending the plays and everything like that. I mean, all these guys do a great job extending the plays, honestly, other than Strong. Strong is going to be, your traditional passer, probably the most traditional passer in this class. His great arm. I know Dave loves him. He's probably chomping on the bit to jump in and talk about him. And Ridder, Ridder's, your proven winner, 44 wins in college. He had, a little bit of a shaky performance against Bama, but that's a lot of quarterbacks going to have that. But I think he's the guy that I've really been intrigued by probably the most at this point, just because he's literally he's improved so much throughout his 4 years, and I think he hasn't reached his ceiling yet as much as guys like maybe Strong and Pickett have. So
Devin,
that's kind of
Devin, what's your overall assessment of those three names, Ridder, Pickett, Strong, and what do you think those guys or any one of those three have to do to kind of separate themselves from the others?
So each quarterback brings a little bit of a different skill set that Tyler kind of touched on a little bit. But when you look at these three guys, they're all kind of different in their own way. Carson Strong is more of the typical quarterback we've seen, in the NFL over the last 10, 15 years, where he's not going to give you a lot outside of structure. It's going to be a lot of working within the confines of the offense, going through reads, going through progressions. He can make, all the throws on the field, from the pocket. And like Tyler mentioned, you see a lot of work at the line of scrimmage. You see him communicating with receivers, making audibles. So for Carson Strong, I think the biggest question for him is going to be, is his knee healthy? And is the medicals going to check out for him? Because I think once he gets over that hurdle, I think teams will be willing to buy in more to what he brings as a skill set. And I think he's going to be more of a specific, kind of team friendly quarterback where you're going to need a solid offensive line around him because he's not going to create anything outside of structure. Now, moving on to kind of Desmond Ridder and what he brings, it's more of what teams are looking for in quarterbacks now in terms of mobility, making plays out of structure, making plays on the run, adding that added mobility and dual threat to his game. Desmond Ridder brings that. A lot of experience at the quarterback position, lots of wins. But for him, it's going to be about his accuracy and whether or not he can continuously, make that next step in terms of downfield accuracy in between the numbers. Because the arm is there, the size, the arm, and the talent are there for Desmond Ridder. But are you going to be able to put it all together? And I think down at Mobile, he's going to have to show that he can consistently drive passes into tight windows, continue to improve the eye movement and just be overall a more complete quarterback. But the talent is definitely there. Upside is there. So it'll be interesting to see how he can operate, down at the Senior Bowl and against some of the top competition. And then finally, Kenny Pickett, he's kind of that. It's tough for Pickett for me, because you see what he's done and he, in terms of all the quarterbacks, you see the eye movement, you see he can make plays outside of structure as well. And you can see that, he can be that quarterback that's not necessarily a star, but he can be, a reliable starter, if that makes sense at the next level. But when you look at him compared to his physical traits, compared to the other quarterbacks in this game, I do think he's a bit limited in terms of, how much is he going to elevate your team? He's going to bring you consistent play. He's going to be accurate, but it's not going to be flashy plays. It's not going to be Josh Allen. It's not going to be Patrick Mahomes, but he's more of the, I don't want to call him Kirk Cousins, but he's more in that elk where, he's going to provide good play. He can move with his legs, but it's not going to be all flashy. And it's not going to be, he's not going to be a huge star, if that makes sense. But I think all three of these quarterbacks bring a little bit of a different mindset and a different skill set. So it'll be interesting to see how it all unfolds down in Mobile.
Yeah, that's a great breakdown. As Tyler mentioned, I'll bring in our resident Carson Strong expert, Dave Bryan, on that. And I think the two biggest questions that Strong is going to have to address down in Mobile is the mobility or lack thereof and the health of that knee. Dave, to both points, I mean, I'll start with the knee issue. I've heard some people say, I think Strong's camp has said it's not a concern. Do you have any insight in terms of just what exactly he dealt with and if it's going to be a concern going forward?
No, just that it is a concern going down there. You see, and one of the things I think he was having to go to the Rams team doctor and all like that. More of what I've concentrated. I've read the reports, obviously, on the knee and all. But
what was wrong with the knee? What did he battle? I don't even know the specific nature of the injuries that he's had. Do you know? Was it like an ACL? Is it just a chronic, like arthritic thing?
Yeah, I think it's more chronic than anything. I'll have to pull back up the story and all like that. I've spent more of my time, obviously, with the on-field stuff with him, and obviously throughout watching the games, all that knee stuff was constantly mentioned and all. But it is something that he's had it worked on, I think, a couple of times already, and one of those times I think was right before just this past season. Had to wear the brace on it and all, and there was a lot of apologies for him throughout broadcasts throughout the season of he's having to play while basically going through rehab on this. It'll be a different story after the fact and all like that. So here's the thing: you can only go what you see by on tape, right? And right now, it's not flattering when it comes to him having to take off with the football and scramble, or with him trying to avoid any sort of a pass rush at all. If it does improve, past being fully recovered from his ahead of 2021 surgery and all. I wonder how much it's going to improve, really, because I don't think it's going to be leaps and bounds with his mobility there. I think there's going to still be, he's still going to probably be of these top quarterbacks, the most limited overall. Now, from a pure passer standpoint, and I don't know how, I don't think I'm going to get any pushback from many guys on this. Now, he's obviously the one that I've watched the most tape on by far. It's not even close overall. He is the purest all-around quarterback in this class as far as making those tight window throws, as far as making the different type of throws, the back shoulder throws, the fade throws, the over middle type tight window throws, the deep down the field throws. And he also does, at least in the limited time that I've seen of these other quarterbacks and going through their tape, he does seem to be the smartest. And I think, who was it? Devin, I think, maybe talked about it, his ability at the line of scrimmage and really things being able to do, right before pre-snap and those kind of things. I think he is the best at. But make no mistake about it, he is more of the old school traditional passer, and as they've already mentioned, he's going to have to, in my opinion, have an offensive line around him. He's not going to be the guy that gives you the Ben Roethlisberger in his prime extend the play type situation here. And, that's, to me, is going to be obviously a big concern. I love the kid, but the mobility, his ability to create outside of structure is going to be a huge thing with him.
Jonathan, do you have a feel for Strong's mobility? I know you don't have a report on him. You had a report on Ritter and some of the other guys we're going to talk about in a moment. And then just broadly, do you think that lack of mobility for Strong is going to really hinder his NFL future?
Yeah, so I actually have a little bit of a blurb that I found from Nevada Sports. I don't know if that, Dave, you've looked into that a little bit.
Yeah, that's the one that I was going off of that I've told Alex about. I just couldn't remember exactly what it was. It says it missed his senior season in high school in 2017 after knee surgery when an MRI revealed some of these words, osteochondritis discans lesion, and resulted in 8 biodegradable nails being inserted to mend a crack in his lateral femoral. Well, we need Dr. Mel.
Yeah, we need to invite Mel to the Zoom call immediately.
In January, Strong had surgery on the same knee needed to clean up the cartilage after he felt some uneasiness in the knee prior to the start of camp this month. And this was obviously written back before the season. Strong has arthroscopy to clear out scar tissue in the knee. Strong was a full participant in Nevada's first fall camp practice, although his knee was bleeding heavily after the session. Anything to add to that, Jonathan?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, I don't have the certification that Dr. Mill does with what she does, but just as like a sports performance specialist, obviously, it kind of seemed like he was dealing with a lot of cartilage issue, like possibly like maybe like meniscal when he was going through, because he said he originally felt it when he was going through like an AAU basketball tournament, and that's what caused him to get those nails inserted into his knee, which caused him to miss his senior season. And that tends to be the case. Like I've had my knee scoped several times going through high school as well. And for the most part, like my knee has been fine. But the fact that he continually had to, like he had the nails inserted in there. And also you have the fact that he continually dealt with pain and uneasiness. It's kind of one of those things where it wasn't maybe a clean procedure, which is why they had to go in. And he felt a lot of discomfort going through it. So that's why he had that procedure in the winter, and then he still felt some uneasiness, and they had a clean up scope in right before the season. That's where he came in, played, had limited mobility as you would expect. I mean, it takes a while to get that full range of motion and full confidence and strength back in that knee. But I would say from a perspective, obviously you had the damage, but I would think that, we've seen what's happened with NFL athletes, like at the running back position, like you've seen with Todd Gurley and his arthritic knee. Mm-hmm. You would think that would be a similar case with Strong going forward, where, as he gets farther along past this issue, like I think in the short term, it won't bug him as much as like, say, like when he was going through it. But I think like 4 or 5 years down the road, that's where you have to be really, really concerned, especially after that first contract. If you do pick him with a high selection, that's where you're going to be like, okay, is this knee going to be an issue and prevent us from, extending him into a second contract?
But before we move forward, from the three of them, and once again, I have watched the most tape on him than anybody, and it's not even close with the amount of tape I watched on him. Is my statement correct about other than that? How was the play, Mrs. Lincoln? In other words, is outside of not having that mobility, and ability to extend the play, is he the best quarterback overall in all the other tangibles or intangibles when it comes to the guys that are going to be down there or the top in this class? All three of you chime in.
I will go ahead and chime in first. Jonathan will chime in first. So I definitely think that when you watch his ability to hit all quadrants of the field, short, intermediate, and deep, like you think that he's definitely the most consistent at making all those throws. You've seen some nice tight window throws. He has a lot of zip and velocity on the ball when he needs to fire it in there. He also has, a nice arc on the ball when he needs to drop it over the bucket over the receiver's shoulder. So I definitely would agree with you on that. And just kind of like, you don't fall too much into the pro comps kind of thing, but you just kind of look at, the size, the ability to make all the throws, and you look at, okay, he can move maybe a little bit in the pocket, but his overall mobility isn't great. Like it reminds me a little bit of like what Matt Ryan currently resembles for the Atlanta Falcons, where, earlier in his career, maybe Matt Ryan was a little bit more mobile in terms of maneuvering in and out of the pocket and being able to throw, but you would never characterize Matt Ryan as a guy that's a great scrambler by any means. But having that similar size, similar arm talent, being able to lead an explosive Atlanta offense for what seemed like the better part of a decade. That's kind of a comparison that I was making a little bit with Carson Strong, just from a throwing aspect as a packet passer.
Devin or Tyler, want to chime in on Carson in my statement on that?
Yeah, Tyler.
Yeah,
this is Tyler. I can. So essentially, I feel like Carson Strong is one of those. He's like you mentioned before too. He's a throwback type of quarterback. If you had him coming out in the mid to early 2000s, I mean, you're probably talking about easily a top 10 pick here. He really does fit that mold. He can sit back in the pocket, and I don't think there's a throw he sees that he hasn't liked. He really does trust his arm that much, but he's able to make the throws as well. Really, it all just comes down to if you have someone around him that has a running game, a decent tight end to throw to, as his outlet. I think he'd be a good fit for them. Very, very vertical guy as well. So, I mean, I'm looking at a team, similar to, Denver. They love their tall quarterbacks as well. John Elway does. And, maybe they fall in love with him in Mobile. They got all the pieces around him. They got a running game. They got Noah Fan out there, and as well as Judy and Hamlet to throw deep to. So that screams to a team that I feel like would be a good fit for him.
Devin, on Carson?
Yeah, Devin here. I'll hop in. I think he's definitely the best pure passer in this class. And when you think about just what you talked about, his ability to hit all the quadrants of the field, paint all the corners, pretty much anything you ask him to do in terms of passing, there's no limitations there. I think, there may be some other guys that may have more natural arm talent or just natural ability, but I think Carson Strong is just the best pure passer in this class. Just from everything he brings to the table, there's really no limitations. There's accuracy at all levels of the field. So I think he's definitely the best pure passer down in Mobile and really in this entire draft class. When you look at the tape of these other guys in this class, he just brings a little bit of everything that you want in every down quarterback. Really, from the jump, I think he's going to be the one that could likely stand out above the rest in this draft class. Assuming that he's healthy and his knee is healthy. But I think he's going to be the one that is going to be the one that probably hits the field first, if I had to guess, of all these quarterbacks in this draft class.
Want to flip over to the American team coached by Dan Campbell and the Detroit Lions. 3 quarterbacks there: Malik Willis, Bailey Zappy, and Sam Howell. Jonathan, I'll start with you because I know you've already produced a report on Sam Howell published on Steelers Depot and have one coming, I believe, on Willis. Which guy, if you had to pick one of the 3, do you think fits what the Steelers specifically are looking for the best? Which 3 is the best Steelers fit?
If I had to go with it, I mean, you guys already talk about like what you've talked about in previous podcasts. I would say that Sam Howell fits kind of what the Steelers are looking for. Obviously, you have with a lot of these guys, the benchmark of the height is going to be the big thing with the ruler up against these kids' heads in terms of, eliminating some old trends. Whereas like Carson Strong's been that trend of that prototypical pocket passer. A lot of these guys are going to be a lot shorter in terms of overall height than what Pittsburgh has been known for. But you look at guys like Slash or, other quarterbacks in the past that haven't been the prototypical height, they usually make up for it in different areas based off athleticism or things of that nature. And I just think that you've seen the interest that Pittsburgh has had in Sam Howell being on campus, going to the bowl game or going to different games throughout the year, the visits with Kevin Colbert. You look at the type of quarterback they're looking for in terms of Tomlin seeking mobility, having the ability to make passes down the field and being able to open up an offense, which is something that Pittsburgh has mightily struggled with over the last couple of years. And, not only using the mobility as a runner, which Howell has shown that he can effectively do, but also just as a passer, being able to move the pocket or being able to evade pressure and be able to roll out to his left or to his right and being able to extend plays in order for receivers to open up downfield that may be initially covered. So I think in terms of trying to get the best bang for your buck, you say Carson Strong is probably the best pure passer in this draft. I think that Howell is probably the best mix. And then I will just kind of roll into Malik Willis because I just kind of I've actually finished up that report the other day, and he is very, very, very intriguing. He is a guy that, you're going to see a lot of Jalen Hurts comps. You're going to see a lot of Lamar Jackson comps. And when you're watching his film, and Dave can probably attest to this, having watched his film last night, you see the highest of highs and the lowest of lows with Willis when you're watching him play as a quarterback. You see the ball jump off his hands at sometimes. You'll see him make some great passes, like against Syracuse and Eastern Michigan in the bowl game. There's points in where he has delivery on a 15-yard out route, which is supposed to be one of the more difficult throws in football. It's very impressive in terms of the zip that he has on the ball, being able to get there and fire it in on time. And there's an instance on the left sideline against Syracuse where he drops back the pass, throws it over the shoulder into a cover 2 hole shot with the safety coming over top, and he gets it right in place for his receiver to catch it. So you see those impressive moments as a passer, and then his running ability, it speaks for itself. Just the ability to not only run with power, like it's very similar with Jalen Hurts with a stocky frame, but he also shows some elusiveness that you see like in Lamar Jackson's game, although we know that Lamar Jackson has more long speed than Willis. But at the same time, there's a lot of issues as a quarterback and as a passer he needs to clean up. He can lock onto receivers. He has it where he has a bad tendency of, winging his elbow, which causes the ball to sail over top his intended targets at the time. He loves to trust his arm a little bit too much and not step into his throws. And that's where you'll see him either overthrow or underthrow a pass, which ends up getting intercepted. And he just seems very oblivious to pressure in the pocket. Like I'll end up posting a sequence of 3 to 4 plays where he has no sense of pressure coming in and whether to tuck and run or to throw the ball away. And he, over the last 2 years, I think the statistic was he has 15 fumbles and he's lost 5 of them. So it's just this idea of like, okay, he has all the talent in the world, but if you don't have that ball security and that sense to live for another down as a passer, kind of a gunslinger mentality, that's where that really needs to be ironed out of his game in order to make that transition into capable starting NFL quarterback.
Tyler, I want to ask about Sam Howell. I don't know how much you've watched of him. I know Jonathan had watched a ton. One knock on him will be the regression that he showed from 2020 compared to 2021. Now, some people will say, obviously, the losses of Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, Dommy Brown hindered him. But is that a concern at all? And just what's your overall assessment of Howell's game?
Yeah, I mean, I think the regression is a bit overhyped just because, like you just mentioned, I mean, if you lose all your top weapons, he talked a lot in the offseason through interviews and things about how he was trying to be a leader, and off the field with this new guys coming in, making sure they knew the playbook and everything like that. It still seemed like he didn't trust those guys as much, which is where you saw him grow as a runner a lot more into this year. I just don't see the running translating as much into the NFL. I don't see him as a dynamic as, obviously like a Willis or even a Ritter at this point running the football. And the other thing that why he was such a good runner last year was actually, I thought he really used himself as a bowling ball. He really just bounced off a lot of guys, and that's how he made people miss. And I just don't see that translating at the next level. It's not something you want to see your top guy taking, 10 hits a game from linebackers and safeties coming down. You see Josh Allen doing that, this especially in the playoffs, he was running all over the place, but I mean, it's not something that he's a much bigger body, and you just not something you want to see. But in terms of a passer, I mean, he has a beautiful deep ball, for sure. I mean, I think that was something he showed a lot, obviously. He showed it a little bit this year, but I mean, you saw it a lot when he had Diami Brown and Daz Newsome, last year. The other things that really, really stuck out to me was, I mean, obviously he comes from a high RPO offense. That was basically the base. So he came from a very, it's binary reads. And how will that translate the next level? Obviously with the Pittsburgh offense, how it was, kind of shifting this year with Matt Canada, that obviously kind of fits what they were kind of going for. So in that way, he does see as a fit. But really, I mean, from what I saw from him, there's a lot of holes. I just feel like, he goes in streaks where he really just kind of, especially when pressure starts coming, he just dips his head. And especially this year, he wasn't really looking to extend the play to throw at all. Like I said, that's kind of where I saw, that's where I kind of saw where I thought he didn't trust his receivers as much as he did years past, because I don't know, is he a junior, sophomore, whatever last year was, he when he extended the plays, he kept his head up and, he was able to find guys downfield. This year, when pressure came, he literally was just kind of trying to turn it into a superhero, and, do it all himself. That was one thing that really kind of worried me, because I wanted to see that. I was really kind of expecting to see him, scramble, make some throws on the run. And what one of my notes here is his improv is more in structure, but off the launch point. So he can move around it a little bit and throw off his base. But you're not going to see, the scramble drill, throwing it down 50 yards downfield, 30 yards down the field too much with him.
Woo! Take your watch off, Tyler. Speak to the congregation. Can't wait to hear Devin. You got anything else? I'm all fired up here. I want to jump in this, but I want to wait a few more people here, Alex. So carry on.
Yeah, and just to answer the question, Howell, a sophomore last year, junior this year, graduated in December of 2021, so that's why he's eligible to attend the Senior Bowl. Devin, certainly feel free to throw in your thoughts on Howell if you'd like, but I also want to ask about the other guys as well, Malik Willis and Bailey Zappy. I think that's how you say it, Zappy. If I'm wrong, please correct me. But Willis is interesting. Kid from Liberty. How does he end up there and become a first-round pick? And Pittsburgh obviously doesn't dip in those smaller school waters too often. Liberty is now a D1 program and a pretty good one at that. And when that last first-round kid from Liberty they took turned out pretty good in Eric Green back in 1990. But just give me your thoughts, first on Willis and Zappy and what they're going to look to show down in Mobile. And, of course, if you have thoughts based on what Jonathan Tyler said on Howell, feel free to share those as well.
Yeah, I think with Malik Willis, I think he's going to be the most interesting quarterback down at the Senior Bowl, and I think he has the most gain down at the gain down at the Senior Bowl, because when you think about the rest of the quarterbacks at this game, I'm briefly going to touch on Zappy as well as Howell. Howell may have had his weapons be decreased this year, and just haven't had the same type of production from his receivers. But I'll tell you what, they're a lot more talented and have plenty of them. A few of them at least have NFL future. When you look at Liberty, there's not a lot on that offense outside of Malik Willis that's going to make huge waves at the NFL level. And I think you got to keep that in mind as part of his evaluation. Malik Willis is someone that has, incredible tools, incredible athletic ability. He makes probably the best, flashiest plays of any quarterback in this class, in terms of just leave you stunned in your seat and like, wow, how was he able to break 2-3 tackles in the backfield, launch the ball 50 yards down the field. When you think about, some of the quarterbacks that have gone in the first round over the last couple of years, I don't think you see a lot of similarities to like the Josh Allens, Lamar Jacksons, Patrick Mahomes, players of that ilk. But I think his skill set is going to be unique, and you're going to have to, kind of strip down some of what he does or what he did in college and really refine that. I think his footwork is still very inconsistent as a passer. I think just his ability to sense pressure around him, I think that's definitely something that he needs to work on. And he's only a 2-year starter, to keep that in mind as well. Sat a few years at Auburn, then had to sit out a year once he transferred to Liberty before the NCAA, changed that rule where you don't have to sit out, or not as many players have to sit out, for a year. And he's working an offense that doesn't really translate to the NFL level. A lot of RPOs, a lot of designed 1 or 2 read throws, a lot of built-in shot plays where, it doesn't matter if, there is a corner bailing and a safety over the top, he still would take chances. And I think when you bring him in, especially at the NFL level, I think what's going to make him, and ultimately be a first rounder, I think he's going to be a first rounder. I think there's just too much physical talent there for a team not to want to take a chance on him. And I think when, he gets down there at Mobile, it's going to be about, I don't think it's going to be necessarily about him, being supremely accurate, because I don't think he's there yet as a passer. But I think if he can show that, with elevated talent around him, that he can rely on his arm and obviously still use his legs and still use that ability, but he can showcase, hitting all, corners of the field, hitting his receivers in stride. I think that was the biggest thing for him, is that a lot of passes were slightly behind or slightly off. They may have gotten there, but they weren't necessarily clean. The footwork has to improve. I think if he takes coaching well and he starts to make leaps as a passer, I think a team is going to fall in love with him. And then, looking at Bailey Zappy, I think he's more of the day 3 quarterback where he can be maybe a spot starter at the NFL level, but I think he's going to project more as a backup. I think he's going to have a good showing now at the Senior Bowl. I think he's going to be a fairly consistent passer, but I do think there's just limitations with his arm. I don't see, him consistently hitting tight window throws. He made a lot of tight window throws, but when you consider some of the teams he was playing against and also some of the placement of those passes, they're just not going to be able to be translatable to the NFL level. But I do think, of any quarterback down at the Senior Bowl, I think Malik Willis, like I said earlier, has the most to gain. And I also think he's going to be the one that has NFL GMs very, very, I don't want to say concerned, but very, he's going to have them thinking and rethinking and constantly thinking about his evaluation, how he would fit. Because with him, you're going to have to design an offense with his skill set early on, because he's not going to be someone you dump into a system that you already have going, because that's just not the type of quarterback he's going to be, I think, at the next level. I think you're going to have to really do a Jalen Hurts type of build, Lamar Jackson type of build, the offense around him. And I think teams are going to buy in on that, but he's going to take a year or two probably to be that full-time starter for one. And then two, you're going to have to continue to clean up the mechanics with them. But It's a very, very intriguing dichotomy between the national team and the American team, because I think with how Willis and Zappy, you're getting even a more diverse skill set and completely different types of quarterbacks compared to the other team.
All right, Dave, I'll let you jump in here. And you've been watching Howell and Willis. I think Willis last night you were tweeting out. So what are your thoughts on those two guys?
Yeah, real quick, can I get Devin's thoughts on Howell, more extended thoughts on Howell?
Yeah, definitely. I do think for how, obviously, you look at the numbers, it's not comparable to what he had as, a sophomore compared to his junior season. I do think Howell makes some really nice throws down the field. I think he is one of the prettiest deep balls of anyone in this class. Just being able to push it down the field, hit his receiver in stride, hit that outside shoulder. I think the mobility within and outside the pocket are really good with him. I do worry a little bit about his pocket presence as well. In addition to Malik Willis, I do think he can get panicked at times and bail clean pockets because he doesn't see anything immediately down the field. So I think he'll need to show down in Mobile that he can handle the pressure within the pocket, step up into the pocket, make throws on the move, on the run. I think that he's going to be able to showcase that. And then, working in a more traditional NFL offense, I think is going to be a key for him as well. Because, with North Carolina, it's also RPO based, not a lot of, chances to do full field reads. But I do think Howell is a really solid option. I think he's more of a day 2 quarterback in this class where, I don't think he's the most physically talented, but I also don't think he's supremely limited either. I think he's kind of in that middle there. So I think Howell will be able to showcase his skill set as well, but I don't think he's going to be a top flight passer in this draft class.
Ooh, I love it, man. The best thing about talking to these guys and knowing they've watched more film than I have, it adds a level of confirmation to what limited I've seen on some of these guys. Now, I'm going to throw out some notes that I have on the limited games that I have on Howell and Willis, and just feel free to one by one to kind of pick through them here. Sam Howell, I think a lot of you have already hit it. RPO strong, heavy from the games that I've watched. Another note on him, I do like his deep ball. I think especially outside the numbers, I think he can I think he can rip it down the field in that. The other another note on him is, man, sure are a lot, and it's obviously RPO related. A lot of slants, some on target, some not on target, some of them probably on the receivers with some drops there. I think some of his completion percentage on some of those intermediate throws might, at least from this last season, might be impacted on some receivers with some drops there. Obviously, I like he is mobile. He's not afraid to take off with football. I think Tyler put it great. Kind of a bowling ball. He thinks he is, and I just worry about that at the next level because he's not Josh Allen there. And Devin also hit on too. Sometimes he will bail from the pocket. Now here's some of my questions about him still that I have not seen, and maybe you guys have seen it. Maybe you say, well, look here. I don't see a lot of him on the move, kind of the design rollout type of stuff, and him making throws from different, kind of platforms. That's one question I have about him. And the other is, where are the other NFL throws at? Where are those 12-yard outs? Where are those back shoulder throws? Where are those fade throws? To me, he's more like just, I'm going to stay in a traditional offense here and make the read that the coach tells me to read and put the ball, in this position, and if I need to bail from the pocket, I'll bail. And as Devin says, he will bail. So those are my initial notes on him before I turn it back over to you guys on Malik Willis. It feels good to hear, and I'm not as deep on him. I tried to make it through 2.5 games and then had to go to bed last night, but raw. I mean, extremely raw. Likes to fall. I mean, he's got the arm strength. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But will like to throw off that back foot, and sometimes even there phantom pressure. I think sometimes in the pocket, he just likes to drift back and go all arm and throw it down the field that way. Incredibly athletic, probably the most athletic quarterback in at least in the top of this class, I'm guessing overall. But once again with him, where are those NFL throws? Where are those tight window throws? Where are those back shoulder throws? Where are those cover two beaters like that? To me, he just got such a high level of rawness to him. Now, as most of you guys have said, he's got a lot of things that really are going to intrigue a lot of front offices in here because, okay, well, he can somewhat do this, he can somewhat do that. But, I mean, he's far from put together, and he's going to need, I think, a lot of coaching at the NFL level. So with all those things I named, I mean, either agree with me or call me full of whatever, but that's some of the initial notes that I have on those two guys, Sam Howell, Malik Willis. Jump in if you will.
I can jump in here. It's Tyler. I just want to just kind of go deeper into the whole Sam Howell not really throwing on the run thing. And I mean, that's really what kind of worried me the most. I mean, that's what I wanted to see. I was expecting to see it on his film, just due to the fact that he was running so much. But it really was, if he was getting out of the pocket, he was trying to run the football. Again, maybe if I dive deeper into his film last year, there's more throws. I did see a few from last year. But it was literally two plays that I saw from a few games that I was looking into. But I watched, I think, 5 or 6 games from this year, and I think I could count on one hand how many throws I saw that were really off base, out of the pocket. His RPO stuff is really just if he hangs on that first read for a good bit, and if it's not there, he's looking to just run the ball. So that's really where I don't know how that's going to translate to the next level. There were a few times you did see him make a full field read, which was actually interesting. It was the one that I remember I pointed out. It was actually on an RPO, which was, that's where you get man downfield and everything like that. He completed it to the backside slant. They had kind of going on with RPOs, but so, I mean, he does have the ability to do that, but it's not something it's full go on his film, and it does worry me. The other thing I wanted to point out with Sam Howell, I know I mentioned it in DMs with you guys before, was kind of his quiet demeanor, which I think is definitely something to be looked at. Because there are a lot of games this year that, I mean, UNC did not have a great year. They were 6-6. There's a lot of games, that they're down. And, it's okay when you're up and, you got your quiet demeanor, but it's very weird to look at when your team's down by, 21 points and your quarterback just sitting on the bench by himself, not talking to anybody and just completely stone-faced. That's something that, a lot of people I know will have problems with. It's okay to have, that leadership by, not everybody's a vocal leader, and I get that. But I do like to have my quarterback to have a little bit of a swagger to him. That's where, we haven't talked about Matt Corral at all, but I mean, he's a very similar type player, and, it's the same type of thing. I mean, you saw him over on the sidelines. They showed all the time on TV, him, gathering the troops, trying to get them, to kind of push forward and everything like that, where Sam Howell just does not have that.
Jonathan, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I'll go ahead and chime in here, Jonathan. So I do agree that on Tyler's statement that it kind of seems like, Howell's more of a mild-mannered, kind of a quiet guy. If you kind of look more into the background, and I think that someone shared in our group chat, he definitely is a salt of the earth, very nice, very easygoing, easy to get along with person, which, you could either take it as quiet as he's quiet as he's not a good leader, or you could take it he's stoic, he doesn't he's not shaken in the moment. So obviously you can see both ends of the spectrum. Obviously in your quarterback, you'd like maybe more of a vocal leader, but I do like to think that he kind of has this, when I watch him, he tries to keep plays alive, and that's the case with a lot of these quarterbacks. Obviously, sometimes it's not the best thing in the world, trying to be able to extend a play and keep it alive when you just have to take what's given and live for the next down. But I do see semblances of a very good team player and a leader. I included a clip of him leading up the way, on a pitch to Javonte Williams, and he just willingly just throws himself into a defender for a block and ends up leveling this guy. So it's just I think he's more of a guy that leads by example and by action rather than words. And I do think that going into the NFL, obviously he'll be a rookie. He'll likely probably start or sit behind someone as he learns, as most of these rookies will. I do think that will continue to go with time, just based off of what I've seen and heard from him from interviews and how he just carries himself kind of as a quiet but professional young man. In terms of the offensive system that he played in, I would say that, yes, Phil Longo, you looked at it back when Phil Longo was the offensive coordinator at Ole Miss. It's very much simplistic, RPO, quick read option. There's a bunch of quicks that he's throwing to the sidelines, and basically here's your read, here's your drop, here's your throw. And yeah, you would like to see more improvisation by Howell. If you go back to Florida State last year and a little bit in their bowl game against Texas A&M, you will see him maneuver the pocket a little bit and roll out to his left or to his right and try and make throws downfield. One of his big throws came to Josh Downs, who was their top receiver this year in the bowl game last year when everyone opted out. You'll see him deliver a nice pass down the left sideline for a touchdown there. But yeah, there definitely was not as much of that as what you would like to see going forward. But I do think with how college offenses are, and it could easily, and I don't think it just goes with this class, with the case of Willis and Howell, and I think if we talk more about Matt Corral as well too, you'll see a lot of quick snap, pass, throw it early, or he's going to take his deep shot. I think you're seeing a lot more in terms of just offensive coordinators are trying to just provide simple offenses and simple reach for these guys. And, they're not really being asked to do much more, which is why we see these quarterbacks struggle when they go into the league. I mean, we look at this year specifically and just how the transition went for the entire rookie class this year when, this was one of the most highly touted rookie quarterback classes in the last how many years. And you have guys like Trevor Lawrence, he's a phenomenal quarterback, but at the same time, his reads were, pretty easy to make in the system that he was asked to run. And he really struggled with reading defenses, albeit on the Jacksonville Jaguars with Urban Meyer as head coach. But, it's going to take some time when you are asked to run that system and not really run anything different. So, I mean, I'm not trying to make a case for Howell or an excuse for Howell, because he definitely needs to show that going forward to prove that he can be that quarterback. But I do want to show the fact that, these kids aren't being really asked to do that a whole lot at the college level. So that's where you tend to see some little bit of growing pains in that transition from college to the pros.
Devin, which of the two of Howell and Malik Willis, where my NFL throws at?
With I think Willis has a few more NFL throws in terms of there are some cover two hole shots in this film. Over the middle, there's not a lot of body of work for Willis, admittedly. I think, that's kind of based on scheme, but also based on, I don't think he's getting his eyes over the middle quick enough. And that's part of the, growth and maturation process for Willis. But there are some cover two hole shots. There are some throws like on the run where he's hitting guys down the field. I think there was a play against like UAB this year where he threw on the run and was able to, get it, in between two or three defenders. But really with Willis, I think there's not a lot there in terms of NFL throws where he's standing in the pocket and hitting seams and hitting, guys over the middle or hitting guys in the second window. I think there was a few plays I saw him maybe hit some dig routes, in the second window. Sometimes in the third window, but overall, I don't see a lot on tape in terms of NFL type of plays and whatnot. For Howell, I think there's more on his 2020 film than his 2021 film in terms of NFL throws. There were some throws over the middle that he made in some tight windows, but with Howell, I think a lot of his throws that translate are the throws, vertical throws, some of the throws on quick slants, but I think both of them are lacking in terms of, you have to dig a little bit through both of their tapes to find NFL type throws. And I think that's partly because of the offenses they run, but also I don't think their strengths lie in hitting the middle of the field and hitting those deeper concepts in the intermediate parts of the field. And I think they're both going to have to prove that down at Mobile, that they can hit those throws, hit those corners, when they're playing cover two, hit those, vertical seam routes in cover three and finding those holes in the zone. I think they're both going to have to prove that they can do that. And not just relying on their physical gifts.
Just to wrap up the quarterback conversation, I want to ask each one of you guys, and Tyler, I'll start with you. What quarterback are you most intrigued and interested to watch down at Mobile? Maybe not the guy that you're expecting to do the best or the worst, but the guy that you think has the most to lose or gain, the guy that you're most intrigued by.
Yeah, so someone I didn't really get to talk about that much was Desmond Ridder. He's definitely the one that I'm most intrigued by. He was the one for me that I see as he's the closest to being now I'm saying, so I think Kenny Pickett is, the most starter ready. Maybe Carson Strong is too, those type of guys, but I think they're closer to their ceiling. I see Desmond Ridder as the one that's closest to starter ready, but has the highest ceiling, if that makes sense. So I see him as being kind of the guy that has the most to gain. Okay. I was really impressed with him. Just being able to, as we just mentioned, he was able to hit a lot of some of his best work actually came against deep overs and deep crossers actually, digs and things like that over the middle of the field. And that was really impressive to me. And he was another guy that he really controlled the line of scrimmage well, and he showed the arm strength that was able to make a lot of NFL throws, deep outs, corners, and seam shots as well. So very excited to see him.
Devin, same question to you. I know you won't be there, unfortunately, but you'll be. I know have a very close eye on practice in the game. What quarterback are you most interested in watching? Is it Willis or is it someone else?
It's definitely Willis for me.
Okay.
I think when you look at the skill set, you look at how the NFL is trending towards in terms of needing a mobile quarterback or wanting a mobile quarterback and wanting someone that has some great physical gifts. I think he checks a lot of the boxes that teams are going to be looking for in terms of players that make plays off schedule, that has that running ability, that adds a different dimension to the offense. Compared to these other guys, I think Willis has the most to gain or the most to lose because, if he doesn't have a great showing, down at the Senior Bowl, or if he struggles or he just doesn't look like he fits or belongs, you're going to see, kind of the talk about him cool off. You're not going to see teams wanting to take as much risk. But, say he has a successful week and he really wows a lot of front offices. Then you're going to have a conversation on maybe teams start discussing maybe trading up for him if he makes it past 10 or 11 or 12. And I think he's the one that I think is going to draw the most eyes just because everything he does, it's just a level ahead or a level above the capabilities of some of these other quarterbacks. So I think Willis is the one, in my opinion, that has the most to gain or lose this week. Or the week in Mobile.
Vote for Ritter, vote for Willis. Jonathan, what say you in terms of the most intriguing quarterback of this group?
I'm going to break the tie here, and I'm going to go with Desmond Ritter that Tyler mentioned. So the post will probably come up in the next few days or so, but I profiled Ritter in a summer scouting as well as going through his player profile leading up to the Senior Bowl. And I actually had the opportunity. So when I was down at the University of Florida working with their football strength conditioning program, I had the opportunity to work with a friend and a fellow intern named Jeremiah Ortiz. He's a current assistant on the University of Cincinnati strength conditioning staff there. And I've just been chiming in with him, texting him back and forth during the fall months, just kind of keeping tabs with him as well as a lot of their NFL dudes there. So I made sure to ask him about Ritter as well as some other guys that will probably be profiled down in Mobile and we'll be profiling on the site. And he's just like, this guy is hungry to be great. And whether if it's in the classroom, whether if it's in the weight room, continually trying to smash all of his records or smash his PRs, whether if it's, as a quarterback out there, just in spring ball, making sure that he's improving his accuracy, his completion percentage, just his desire to get better. And I think it was hit on earlier where we talked about the maturation process with him as a passer when he came into Cincinnati. I think he barely went over 2,000 yards in his first couple seasons. And then this year to be well over 3,000, being more reliable as a passer, really opening up that Cincinnati offense that was well complemented by Jerome Ford in the backfield and just made themselves contender that, a non-Power 5 school ends up making the college football playoff, which is basically unheard of with, just the dominance that we see with Power 5 schools. That's a testament to Ritter and his leadership, but also his dedication to getting better. And when you're talking about, where are your NFL throws? I mean, going through his tape, they run more of a pro-style offense at Cincinnati than you will see with Willis or what you'll see with Howell. And there's several examples. You go to the bowl game last year versus Georgia, and he's driving at the end of the half, and he ends up getting flushed from the pockets, rolls out to his right, and then throws cross the body, plants his feet, and then delivers a strike in the end zone with the defender coming in. And even this year against Alabama, while he didn't have a great stat line, there's a couple throws where he's getting flushed from the pocket, rolls out, and has to deliver the ball on the run and then delivers an accurate pass. So, all the throws, the arm talent, it's there. He's a very smooth mover. He's not the dynamic athlete that Willis is, but he's a very much a long strider as an athlete. But the thing is, he still has to develop that consistency and accuracy as a passer, because much like some of the other prospects, he'll end up airmailing passes overhead. He'll throw a ball short. That's where you see interceptions. That's where you see turnover-worthy plays. As well as another thing with him that is probably my biggest critique is making sure that he senses pressure and he's able to maneuver the pocket. There's a lot of issues in terms of balance where he might slip and fall or he might take a wrong step. He's gotten better. You definitely see improvement from 2021 compared to 2020, and I would agree that he has the highest ceiling. He has the prototypical size. He has the arm talent. He has the mobility. He has what you want. It's just making sure that he can make that jump and seeing that against future NFL competition. He showed it in flashes against Georgia and against Alabama, but he just wasn't able to win with what he had. So I'm really, really excited to see what he gets possibly on a level playing field, throwing to NFL caliber receivers against NFL defenses in order to show off what he can at Mobile.
Only have about 10, 15 minutes left. I know it's been a quarterback-centric show because, A, that's what the Steelers could be looking for, and B, that'll be one of the top storylines down in Mobile with all the talent attending. But I do want to at least touch on some other positions, other guys to note here. Just give me maybe one or two names of non-quarterbacks to look for down at the Senior Bowl. Devin, I'll start with you. Who are some guys that you're going to be keeping an eye and an ear on in terms of the Senior Bowl reports during next week's slate of practices and games?
Yeah, so there are a few some under the radar guys, some guys that teams may not know just yet that I think have a chance to really rise their draft stock or really get in the know in terms of teams getting to know their name. So for me, when I look at both rosters and a few names that kind of intrigue me. One being safety Tyson Anderson out of Toledo. Toledo is obviously a MAC school, a team that Steelers fans should be familiar with, obviously with Deontay Johnson. But when you look at what he brings to the table, he brings a little bit of everything as a safety for Toledo. He has over 800 special team snaps, so he's going to translate immediately at that level. He's going to be a special teams, could be a special team star, to be honest. But on the field, he plays that kind of rover linebacker, safety, in the box type of guy, but also flashes some nice hips and coverage. So I think down at Mobile, he may get some work at nickel. He may get some work at safety, some work at linebacker. But I think he can be a matchup dependent player where you throw him on running backs, you throw him on tight ends, you throw him at sometimes the best slot option or big slots. I think he's going to bring a lot to the game in terms of being able to cover several different positions. So he's one player that I'm excited to see down at Mobile. And looking at some of these other guys, the tight end position specifically, I'm very intrigued to see the Cole Turners of the world, the Trey McBrides. The Mountain West had probably the best group of tight ends down at the Senior Bowl, and it's going to show once the week starts. There's a lot of talented guys. I think Trey McBride is the tight end one for me in this draft class thus far, and I think he's going to continue to prove that down in Mobile. But I think he'll have a chance to show his ability to be able to not only block in line, but be a receiving target over the middle. And to me, it kind of reminds me a little bit of, and not necessarily a direct comp, but he reminds me a little bit of, Pat Freiermuth with the Steelers in terms of his skill set and what he brings to the table. He might not be the most dynamic athlete, but he's someone that I think can benefit. Two more names that I want to drop before I turn it over. Fedarian Mathis, the Alabama defensive lineman. He is going to be a stud down at Mobile. I think of all the defensive linemen down in Mobile, they're going to be there. It's Deontay Wyatt, Zachary Carter, quite a few names. I think Fedarian Mathis has the best skill set in terms of he's able to disengage from blocks. He's able to be effective in pass rush moves. He has several pass rush moves that he's able to maneuver and be able to throw out there. And then he's also able to disengage with his hands. He may have gone to, Alabama, of course, but I do think he's being a little bit overlooked because it's not just Jordan Davis in this class that people seem to love and cling to. I think Fedarian Mathis, I think he translates a little bit better to the NFL level than a Jordan Davis or maybe a Deontay Wyatt because he's able to, be able to be versatile as a one gapper. He can play one technique, three technique, and be a great fit in a 4-3 defense. So I think he's going to show down at the Senior Bowl that he's one of the best defensive linemen in this class, and he could even raise his stock to that second round, late first round level if he has a really good week. Final name I want to drop, Joshua Williams, the defensive back out of Fayetteville State. He is a D2 guy, played for the HBCU there at Fayetteville State, but he may have one of the best hip flips and best closing ability of any corner down at the Senior Bowl. And his name is not yet known in outside of draft circles, but I think he's going to be able to be that guy that could elevate himself into a top 100 pick because of how talented he is. And obviously there's going to be questions about the competition level and what he brings. But, you think of Quinn Miners and what he did last year and being able to raise his draft stock from the Senior Bowl and being essentially a star down there. I think Joshua Williams from Fayetteville State has that ability to do the same. And hopefully I get some tape on him before the Senior Bowl starts, but definitely looking forward to seeing him.
Yeah, love the name. Love to hear the small school guys who are going to get a chance on the big stage. Tyler, same question to you. One or two guys, just give me a quick blurb on, who they are and what kind of intrigues you, the non-quarterbacks that'll be down in Mobile.
Yeah, so my number one guy that I've kind of found, and from what I've seen after I've had a few threads on him on Twitter, evidently he's not too much of a sleeper, but Christian Watson from North Dakota State. He's a wide receiver. I really see him as a burner. I see him as a 4-4 guy that can really stretch the field. He's a long, lengthy guy. I think he's like 6'4", has a big wingspan. He's really not going to blow you away with his route running. I think that's where he's most raw at this point. But you see him as a true Z receiver. He can go up and get it too. He's someone that, I'm really excited to see how he comes off against, the top tier, cornerbacks that are down there, Roger McQuarrie's and stuff like that. Because that's where he's going to be able to shine. If he can, get off the press down in Mobile well, catch the ball contestedly down there, he's really going to be a name to watch rise up draft boards. Because I think by the time he gets to the combine in Indy, I think that's really where he's going to be able to shine if he has a good Senior Bowl. Going to the defensive side of the ball, one guy I really want to see is JoJo Domann from Nebraska. He's another guy that they kind of use as kind of a rover, outside linebacker type that they could match up with receivers. He's a former safety, and he has really, really smooth hips for his size. Someone that I could see. I don't want to compare him. Don't think I'm comparing him to him, but a Fred Warner type that really shined at the Senior Bowl. He was another guy that really kind of played rover, had a lot of, block shedding out there to make those types of plays, but then they moved him inside for the Senior Bowl, and that's where he kind of stayed. I see, a possible similar route for JoJo Domann. The only problem with him is he does have, I think, 2 knee injuries through college, which obviously is something to be worried about.
All right, Jonathan, same question to you. 1 or 2 non-quarterbacks to pay attention to.
Or 7.
Or 7.
Don't tempt me, Dave. Don't tempt me. I take you up.
Hey,
That's true.
I got nowhere to go. Unlike officer and gentleman, I got nowhere to go.
All right. I'll go ahead and give a couple here. So one is that I was really high on going into summer scouting just based off the play the last couple of years. So I was really big into Spencer Brown last year, and I know he was brought up on this show quite often as that tackle from UNI. His teammate, Trevor Penning, who I have watched several games of 2019, 2020, and 2021 film on. I am firmly confident saying that he is a better prospect than Spencer Brown, who went in the 3rd round. Like, obviously, now you've seen the hype come up to where in Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft, he's going like 14th overall to the Ravens. And honestly, like at 6'7", 321 pounds in my post, I'm going to highlight just this guy is a big, mean, nasty, strong run blocker. It's like if you're looking to make an improvement in your running game, this is the guy to target. He looks to not only just block you, but to throw you into the ground and look down upon you after you're done with it. He has good movement in terms of being a pass blocker. There are instances where you see a little bit of a forward lean and he needs to play with a little bit better base and pass protection, but I think that's him just being confident in his abilities against subpar competition. He had moments where he looked good against Iowa State and moments where he didn't look as good. So it's just the competition is going to be the big thing for him because he has all the physical tools and intangibles you want to see. He's a very well-represented kid. He interviews really well from what I've seen of him. And if I can get my hands on him and talk to him down in Mobile, that'd be something to see. But just seeing him go against NFL caliber pass rushers is my big question for him. In terms of a guy on the defensive side of the ball that I really look forward to seeing, going back to the Cincinnati trend, one guy that Jeremiah Ortiz pointed out to me, my former coworker was, you need to watch for Darian Beavers, the linebacker. So he was a UConn transfer. He played high school ball at wide receiver and safety, and since then has gained 100 pounds and moved to defensive end when he went to UConn. He was used sparingly as a defensive end, ended up becoming a starter, leading the team in sacks. He ended up transferring because he is a Cincinnati, Ohio native, and transferred back home to go play for the Bearcats, and he got moved to off-ball linebacker. And if you watch his film, you'll see him use both as an off-ball linebacker as well as being able to put his hand in the dirt on third down and rush as a pass rusher. And just going through his tape right now, just the speed and explosiveness he has at 6'4", 255. Like, there's videos out there of him dunking basketballs, and just that freak athleticism at that size that you look for. That's very much of those Planet Theory guys that Zaven Collins kind of was last year coming out of Tulsa as a smaller school guy that really took off during the pre-draft process. And I could see a similar rise with Darian Beavers moving forward through this pre-draft process, depending how he tests and how he plays here at the Mobile in the Senior Bowl. And then one last name, and I mean, I had to do it because I have Dave here, Romeo Doubs, the wide receiver from Nevada. So we spent all this time talking about Carson Strong, but, you have Dave talking about we need someone with, speed, or, a guy that can take the top off the defense. Well, I don't think that Romeo Doubs is going to be the fastest receiver in terms of clock speed when it comes to testing at the combine. The guy does have an ability to win deep down the field. You see him regularly pulling away from defensive backs and being able to win deep, as well as being able to create yards after the catch on short and intermediate routes. And the big thing with me watching him in summer scouting, like in his 2020 film, was he was like a James Washington player where they like to play him on like one specific side. Whereas this year they moved him around. They played him in the slot. They played him out wide. They played him on the left. They played him on the right. So they played him more in different facets of the game and different formations. And he ran a little bit more of a diverse route tree. I mean, it's still, that air raid system. So it'll be interesting to see how he translates to the league. But I'm really interested to see what he plays like and how he separates and goes against NFL caliber coverage. And just to be able to see if he distinguishes himself as, okay, he was a very good deep threat at Nevada for Carson Strong. Can he make that similar jump to the league and be able to be a deep threat at the NFL level?
Yeah, I worry about just that overall. How's he going to clock overall? He does have football speed. I just wonder what the clock's going to say on him. Great kid too. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much you guys have dug into his background, but supposedly one of those 5-star character type kids, which out of a wide receiver, sometimes hard to find there. But you ain't got to twist my arm. In fact, he is the reason I came across Carson Strong. I started to see this wide receiver start making plays down the field, deep down the field, and was first attracted to him. Those are some of the first clips I started to post on Twitter well over a year ago there. And then as a byproduct, I was like, who's this quarterback throwing these bombs to him and all like that. So definitely don't have to twist my arm to pay attention to Romeo Doubs.
All right, Dave, any final questions, anything that I missed you wanted to ask the guys about the Senior Bowl or any of these prospects?
Yeah, about 80 of them here. But here's the thing. We are obviously a Steelers podcast. That means we have a lot of Pittsburgh fans listening to this show. I don't think we've touched on enough on Kenny Pickett here. So real quick, I get kind of the sense that that all three guys are kind of, Kenny is what Kenny is right now. Give me a quick overview on where is Kenny in this class? Is he already at the ceiling? And what about the hand size thing and the quadruple jointed thumb or whatever that report is as far as that goes? I think we need to get a little blur from each of these three guys on Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, I can start with Kenny Pickett. Since I watched him last week, I think with Kenny Pickett, you're going to get, first I'll start with kind of hand size, kind of measurables, et cetera. I do think I don't want to say he's too small. I do think he's a little bit on the small side in terms of height, weight and what he brings to the table on that note. Hand size, I don't know really. I don't play that too much in terms of evaluations. I know NFL teams do, and they have a threshold that they like to have their quarterbacks with. But I don't really see too many issues in terms of, his ability to grip the ball or throw the ball or anything like that. Obviously, he wears gloves, and you don't have to take too much from that. Teddy Bridgewater is most notably the other quarterback, at the NFL level that wears two gloves on his hands. In terms of what he brings to the table, I do think he's made leaps and bounds in terms of NFL level play from 2020 to 2021. That extra year of playing with Pitt again definitely helped him in terms of his development. It's going to be that older type of quarterback where he's not going to be the 21, 22-year-old coming out. I think he's going to be 23 or 24 by the time he gets drafted. But when you look at what he was able to do, he was able to elevate that Pitt team, obviously, to the ACC championship and win the ACC championship. Didn't play in the bowl game, the New Year's Six bowl game they ended up in. But when you look at his tape, I think you see a lot of NFL concepts. You see a lot of play action. You see a lot of passes over the middle of the field down the seam. A lot of corner routes being hit. A lot of him looking off safeties. I think the most impressive thing about him is his eye movement, and I think he has the most consistent eye movement in this class. While I do think Carson Strong is the better overall passer and just the best passer in this draft class in general, I think Pickett offers you a lot more in terms of he can come in and run your offense the way you need to. I don't think he's going to make like a ton of plays, like crazy plays outside of structure, but he does offer that ability. I do think he throws with anticipation outside the numbers down the field. I do think his arm is a little bit limited. I don't think he's going to be the one that's going to be launching the ball 50, 60 yards down the field, but he does have enough arm strength to drive passes into tight windows, hit the hole shots, and hit largely all the throws that you need him to. But I just don't think he's going to be someone that is a risk taker, if that makes sense. He's going to run the offense in the confines of the offense. He's going to trust his guys around him. He's going to trust the skill set at receiver that he has. He's going to be able to drive passes into windows. But when you look at the rest of the quarterback class, and I do think he stacks up as a top 4, top 5 quarterback ultimately. There's been talk about him going first round. I'm not quite there yet in terms of taking him in the first round, because I do think he doesn't have quite the ceiling that some of these other quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl and just in general in his class has. But I do think he offers you consistent play, passer that keeps the offense on schedule, doesn't take a lot of sacks, but understands his limitations on getting outside the pocket. He's not going to try and outrun a ton of defenders. Although the fake slide that he did in the ACC championship, obviously, was talked about quite a bit. But in terms of what Pickett brings, I think he brings you NFL level of understanding of an offense and how it works. Can make several throws down the field and across the middle. I just think that he doesn't have the ceiling as a Malik Willis or even a Carson Strong or some of those other guys where they still have room to grow and room to improve. I just think he is going to be he can be a starter at the NFL level without a doubt. But I just don't think when you look at everything, in terms of the skill set, the production, everything he brings, I just don't think he's going to be a high level star. I think he can be an average quarterback at the NFL level, but I don't think he's ever a quarterback that is going to be top 10 in terms of production and just value at the quarterback position.
I know you said earlier you don't want to compare him to Kirk Cousins, but I think you just described Kirk Cousins.
Yeah,
but
basically.
Jonathan, go ahead on Pickett.
Yeah, so I did 2 scouting spotlights on Pickett during the season, one against Clemson and the other against Wake Forest in the ACC championship game. And one thing I wrote after the Clemson game, and while I do think that he may have a little bit more zip on the ball, and now at this point in his career compared to this other person, he might have a little more mobility. Like, obviously, we're talking about the 2 gloves and the hand size. Like, I mean, Teddy Bridgewater was a guy that kept coming to my mind as a guy that, was a decent quarterback at Louisville, but then had a really big breakout junior campaign that put him like top 5, top 10 in first round height, and then ended up falling into 32nd overall by that pick by the Vikings when they trade back in the first round. But I do think that there's similarities in terms of overall size and stature, in terms of like Teddy played on a pretty good a Louisville team that had like guys like Devontae Parker that were there. And then you see, like, I know a lot of the members of Steelers Depot are really interested in that Jordan Addison, that receiver that is not draft eligible, but will be eligible, I think, next year, just as a talent that Pickett, as well as just other receivers that were on the team that he had the ability to throw to, compared to kind of what was down ACC conference this year. So yeah, he was able to take them and he had a great season. But much like Devin just said, like, I just don't see the overall ceiling at the moment. And I think he's a guy that can steady the ship, much like, Teddy Bridgewater has been. Like, the Broncos have been solid, and, he's able to keep that team around, 500, but he's not going to propel them into a playoff caliber or a Super Bowl contender. That's where I kind of see Pickett and his limitations. Like, there's instances where you do see good mobility outside the pocket, being able to throw on the run. And I've highlighted that on a couple of clips in these scouting spotlights. But there are plenty of instances also where he airmails passes over his receiver's head, or he'll skip passes at receiver's feet. Or there's a play in the ACC championship game versus Wake Forest where he deliberately misses a receiver and throws behind on a wide open slant route. And then just because, the offensive corner is like, oh, it was open, we're going to run it again. And they throw the exact same pass, and he gets it a second time with the defense failing to adjust and near the goal line, so he gets a touchdown there. But yeah, I'm kind of left wanting more, to be honest, from Pickett. I do see like guys like, Malik Willis, Carson Strong, I think Desmond Ridder and Sam Howell, like, in Matt Corral for that matter, just have that ceiling, that, intrigue. Like, okay, you see the room for growth, whereas he's going to be a 24-year-old rookie. And by the time that he gets down the NFL playbook, like, he might be able to start sooner than all those kids outside of maybe Carson Strong. But at the same time, I don't know if you're going to have that ceiling that we've witnessed during the, this divisional round of the NFL playoffs, where, you need to have a quarterback that can go toe to toe with like a Josh Allen or, Patrick Mahomes. And I'm not saying that any of these quarterbacks have that ability, but you need to be able to have a quarterback that can develop and grow more. And I just think that he's very limited at what he provides. I think he's going to be very steady. I think if you have a great offense around him, like, you could have a situation like Jimmy Garoppolo, where he has a great team around him and is able to elevate the overall team together. So if you want to answer the question, if you've been struggling with quarterback for the last few years and you just want, a B plus B minus kind of guy, like, I think he's going to be able to provide that for you, but you're just not going to get those high moments that you're looking for when possibly drafting like a first round quarterback.
And Tyler, any lasting thoughts on Pickett and kind of where you rank him?
Yeah, sure. So, Kenny, I'm a Pitt fan by trade. So I've watched Kenny for, as many years as he's been there. And this season really came out of nowhere. It really, when he decided to come back, it really felt like, I'm sure we have a lot of Penn State fans also that listen to the podcast. It felt like what Penn State fans felt like when Sean Clifford was coming back for his final year here this upcoming season. But he really did improve this year. You could tell he mastered the offense. And he really trusted his arm going into this year. He was trusting what he was seeing. One thing to note on him really was, he has the most plays out of probably any of the guys, I think, that I've studied through this whole process, in terms of just throwing on the run and extending plays and making that play on the run. So that is something that I think really stands out for him. It's not his calling card by any means, but just compared to the other people in this class, definitely shows that. One thing to note about that too is he actually only throws really rolling right. If he rolls left, he's running, which is something that always kind of stood out to us. I'm not sure that's something you can game plan for against him, but something that you can definitely see in his tape. He was cool and easy in the pocket. He's not really easily rattled and everything like that. He can run. But yeah, I kind of agree with everybody else what they were saying. If you feel like you're a quarterback away right now and you need to win right now with the roster you have, he's my guy you're going to go with. I think you pretty much see what you get with him. I don't think you're going to see him come in the league and, be a superstar. But he can definitely, win some games for you.
All right. Well, it's a great conversation, a really strong preview of the Senior Bowl. We're definitely going to have you guys back post Senior Bowl at some point. And obviously, you guys will be writing down there and producing articles for Steelers Depot about what you guys see at practice and player interviews and all those kinds of things. So can't wait for, Jonathan, Tyler, you guys to get down there. Devin, your insight's always appreciated as well. I know, again, you can't make it this year, but certainly going to welcome and can't wait to see your draft profiles this year. And Dave, of course, I know you'll be out there with the Shrine guys with Josh and Mel and I think Owen as well, talking about the Shrine game.
Yeah, great talk today. Real quick, if I may, 1 minute each. Rank the quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl as you have them, as you would take them right now. Got to rattle these off real quick. Each of you go.
Okay, I can go first, Tyler. So I have Kenny Pickett being my number one, Desmond Ridder 2, Carson Strong 3, Sam Howell, and then Malik Willis, and then Bailey Zappy.
Okay, Jonathan?
All right, so I'll probably go, based off of what I've seen so far, I'll go Howell 1, I'll go Desmond Ridder 2, I'll go Carson Strong 3, I'll go Kenny Pickett 4, and then Malik Willis 5, and Bailey Zappy 6.
Devin.
I'll go Carson Strong 1, Malik Willis 2, Howell 3, Ridder 4, Pickett 5, and then Zappy 6.
Interesting. I love it. I love it.
Very
I love
varied.
it. We'll talk more about these guys, obviously, after these guys see all of us see more tape and see the Senior Bowl too. I'm fired up.
All right, let me close out the show. Let me get your guys' Twitter handles. Be sure to follow these guys for sure. You should be already, but these guys are going to produce great content, especially with the Senior Bowl and the Shrine game coming up here. So follow Jonathan on Twitter at J_Heights, HEITS. Be sure to follow Tyler on Twitter at TriggeredWise and follow Devin on Twitter at RealD_Jackson. So appreciate your guys' time and really, can't wait to go through the rest of draft season with you all. And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. And I say that every time, David. I'm going to just keep saying it, but we never left the Terrible Podcast. So I don't know why I started saying welcome back to the Terrible Podcast, but welcome back to the Dave and Alex portion of the Terrible Podcast. And again, our thanks to Jonathan, Tyler, and Devin. Great insight. Those guys clearly at least ahead of what I'm, where I'm at in terms of draft preparation. And so we're thankful to have them as insight and can't wait for Jonathan and Tyler to join me down in Alabama again this time next week.
But look, and we've got a lot of, we got the Owen and Josh and Dr. Mel going out to Vegas and all. So I think we have come to the conclusion and always have been trying to go this way, but we probably need more of these round tables during the off season here. And it is so good. You probably could tell how excited I was during that as well too. My biggest takeaway too is, look, I know these guys watch tape. They work for Steelers Depot because we trust their evaluation skills and their expertise level and the time that they put into this. And one of my main takeaways that makes me feel better in the little tape of what I've seen on people maybe not named Carson Strong is it gives some confirmation to what I think I've seen on tape so far, which makes me feel better about my own development of being able to evaluate such a key position, such as quarterback and all like that. But man, I could have had him on for another 45 minutes to an hour if you would have let me.
I know you were trying to.
We didn't even talk hardly about Matt Corral some. So that that's another.
Well, he's not at the Senior Bowl, so
right. But I mean, that's a guy that's in this class that, we're going to have to address at some point.
Sure.
Now, does any of this mean that we think it's a slam dunk chance that the Steelers take a quarterback in the first round? No, but with it being more of a potential this year than it's probably been in years, we have to make sure we dedicate time to that key position group.
Yeah, it's a conversation that has not been this open and possible since 2004. And so I think it's, we should give the respect that opportunity, has right now. And it is an interesting quarterback class. It's not an elite group, but it is a very tightly bunched group. And all eyes will be on who separates themselves positively, negatively from that position group during those couple days down in Mobile. So something to watch for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, Dave, let's wrap up today's show with just a couple reader emails. I know we've run long with the draft podcast section of things, and the Hunt news came in. So let's just do maybe one or two reader emails, and we'll tackle more on Friday, I promise.
Yeah, let's just hit a couple of them here. And once again, sorry we don't have a lot of time, but I think hopefully you enjoyed in place of that us talking a lot about the quarterbacks and previewing the Senior Bowl here. Jonathan Mason writes in, this is about the Parcells criteria that I always like to point to this time of year. How much stock should we put in considering Parcells criteria for drafting a quarterback, and do you think the Steelers value it? Of this year's top prospects, only Pickett and Ritter meet all 7. Carson Strong at 6 of 7, Malik Willis and Sam Howell at 5 of 7, and Matt Corral at only 3 of 7. No 2021 quarterbacks met all 7 of the Parcells criteria, and the 2020 quarterbacks that met all 7 were Justin Herbert and Jalen Hurts. And yes, Ben, he says Ben didn't meet all 7, but I think he sent me another email and says, what did he say here? He says, sorry, Ben only had 5 of 7 since he was a junior. He said he wanted to fix that mistake there. How much criteria should we put into the Parcells 7 check boxes for drafting a quarterback? It's just one of those things out there. I don't think you live and die by it, but I obviously think there's something to it overall with what Parcells was getting at, and more of it's more along the lines, I think, of the experience and statistical and accomplishment, along with accomplishing something like graduating there. Now, we've come a long way with underclassmen and all like that, and you have a lot of underclassmen that are more experienced now that come out. It is fun to look at. It is fun to track, but the further, like anything else, the further we get away into progressions of the league and underclassmen and all like that, probably the less weight that. And look, I mean, COVID probably had an impact on some of these, highly impact on some of these programs as well too. I don't totally discount it. I look at it every year, but I don't think you make your decisions on that. But I think there is that criteria and line of thinking does hold some level of water still.
Yeah, I think it still does, but it has evolved because the game has evolved so much. And so some of the benchmarks about starts and senior versus junior, whatever those things are probably tougher to hit. So if you find the guy who hits them all, it's probably still notable, but I don't think it's as crushing for the guys that don't, just because of how much the game has changed from then till now.
Right. Let's see here. LM writes in, excited for the best Steelers draft coverage out there. Thank you. Need a speedy receiver. I'd love a speed change of pace running back too. First round, I'm excited for all of the quarterback outs or offensive line and defensive line profiles you guys will be writing about. They're going to have more needs than picks, so really got to make them count. Free agency going to be interesting to see what needs are taken of or are glaring. Yeah, look, going to be a busy offseason. A lot of holes on this roster as well too. As far as speedy receiver goes, you don't have to twist my arm on that. A change of pace running back, I have a feeling you're not going to probably be able to address that. Nothing says you can't address it during the draft, but I'd like to see if they have to stand pat with their current, draft collateral that they have, which obviously could change if a minority hiring, goes elsewhere or something like that. But I'd be a bit surprised after spending a first round draft pick on a running back if you took, let's say a change of pace running back early in this thing. I like my attack plan of signing 8 undrafted free agents and going that route as well too. What are your thoughts on the speed receiver, Alex?
Yeah, I mentioned that. We've talked about that many times over the last 12 months, probably, about the value of getting big explosive plays and fuel flipping moments and 50-yard touchdowns and things like that. So, you don't want to be so focused on speed and speed only because it is just one component of receiver play. And if you're just a straight line track guy, you're not going to probably succeed in the NFL. For example, neither of us were huge on Anthony Schwartz coming out of Auburn last year, despite his legit 4.2 track kind of speed. So you got to find someone that's more than just speed, but it would be nice to have that true burner threat, because typically when the Steelers offense in the Ben area was at its best, they've had a true vertical burner threat. Mike Wallace and guys like Nate Washington and guys that could really routinely win over the top.
What do you think about that Devin Tompkins clip?
Yeah, that dude's got some hops. That was great.
Go watch that Utah State, New Mexico State game, man. There is catches all in that thing of him going above the crowd. That guy's, like I said, like 5'8" playing. It is.
What's his vert? Do we know what his vert is? Like 40-inch vertical, probably.
His vert is yes. That's his vert. I mean, just look at that one play alone. I mean, that corner that's covering him on that play, I went and researched that, is 6 foot or listed at 6 foot. And both those guys are off the ground pretty good ways. And Devin Tompkins is even, I don't know, another foot, his extension is another foot over that. I mean, it's got to be like 44 or 45 or something, I would think. I mean, it's in the 40s, right? It has to be.
I didn't know there's sometimes articles that kind of talk about what those guys are doing, but I would be surprised if we touch 40 plus. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I said I wanted to keep it short, and while I'm looking up Devin Tompkins vertical, which probably is not.
I got you. Man, it is easy to be size biased, measurable biased against some of these guys, right? Especially the quarterback class. I mean, you look at this quarterback class and look at all these short guys under 6'3", under 6'2" in this draft class here, and you look at a guy like Tompkins, it's like 5'8", I don't know, 155 or whatnot. But man, that guy takes hits. He skies above these other receivers. He catches with his hands. He's got the speed. He's got all of that there. And I can't stop watching him because of it. And even though I am measurable biased about him, now is he going to be a first round guy? No, I don't think he is. A second round? I don't know. I think you get anywhere in that second or fourth round, he becomes an option, and people will automatically say, well, yeah, but Dre Archer, Chris Rainey, none of those guys were going down the field catching passes. Here's the stat about Tompkins. He led the nation last year in catches of more than 30 air yards down the field last season. He had 13 of them, Alex.
Oh, wow.
13 of them there. So that's, for people to throw out the Chris Rainey's and the Dre Archers and all like that, that's the stat that means the most there, catching the football down the field and contested catches and all like that. But if you get a chance, Alex, go watch Utah State versus New Mexico State, or anybody listening.
Deal. Yeah, according to ESPN, when he came out of high school, he jumped 37 inches. And so he's probably near 40, you think, just develops over time, gets stronger.
I bet 42. Yeah. I'm going to call my shot 42 vertical, because that kid can get up there, man.
There's a comment on a Utah State message board that says, asking what his vertical is, and this guy writes back, the correct answer is whatever it needs to be. It seems to be just Tompkins, however high he has to jump to get the ball, seems to be he's able to do it.
Look, that guy's not going to get any bigger than what he is now. He is what he is, and he's a lighter weight than even a Tyreek Hill. But man, if you think he could take that kind of punishment and be able to move, obviously the big fear with him at the NFL level is getting punched off the line of scrimmage, right? The physicality and be able to keep your feet in routes. But sometimes you can't touch what you can't catch. In that aspect. But he is an intriguing dude, I would tell you that, as is the bigger wide receiver out of USA that I think will be down. I think he's going to be at the
Drake London. Is that who you're talking about?
The
USC?
USA. The USA.
Oh, USA.
Yeah.
What college is that? University?
South Alabama.
Oh, South Alabama. Okay. Yeah, it's not Drake London then. I don't know who you're talking. I know who you're talking about, but I don't know the name off the top of my head.
Jalen Tolbert.
Okay.
He is 6'3", 190 pounds, and he will, I think, be at the Senior Bowl. He was second on that list of 30 or more air yard catches last season with 12 there. So that's another name, obviously, to look at there. And The kid you're talking about is the one that suffered that knee or leg injury or something, wasn't it? The USC kid?
Yeah, I thought when you said USA, I thought you were saying USC, okay. So I apologize. That's why I'm saying. Yeah, that South Alabama kid should be comfortable. They're literally playing in a stadium. So he'll be right at home, literally, down there.
All right, that's we got a couple of questions out of the way. We'll have time to hit more of those on Friday, right, Alex?
Yeah, I apologize. I know I said let's keep it short. Then I ended up on a Utah State message board reading quotes from there. So I failed in that regard.
You're feeding my addiction, aren't you?
I am. I'm enabling. Yeah. So we'll come back Friday though and have lots of reader emails.
Hey, let us know what you think about this podcast today and everybody that participated in it. If you get a minute, jot us an email, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com, and tell us what you liked, didn't like. Did this thing run too damn long, as usually is the case, or could it be another 2 hours? Give us some feedback on it today, if you will. Follow me on Twitter @Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter @Alex_Kozora. Follow the show @Terrible Podcast. Once again, email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do, want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, go to the site, hit the ad-free button as well, too. Thanks again to Devin Jackson, Tyler Wise, Jonathan Heitritter for their time today. Make sure you're following those guys on Twitter as well, too, and thanking them for their time. More of these roundtables in the future. So with that, Alex and I will talk to you on Friday. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.